We know that. I mean, we just have to look back to 2019. So no one should be saying, let's return to normal. We need to return to a whole new reality in terms of how we look at and educate and move in order to get this right. Moving forward, our collective mission must continue to extend and expand every achievement opportunity to every Maryland student, especially those who have been historically disadvantaged, including our Black boys. The hosting of today's first summit to form the culture of Maryland schools for Black boys is an important step to dismantling the inequities and barriers that persist in our schools and communities. As we prepare to return to in-person learning, I assure you MSD is not settling for a return to normal. We are raising the bar because when we look at the data that the task force transforming the culture of Maryland schools for Black boys report, it's clear that our past normal was not good enough. The task force implementation guide provides effective approaches for social and emotional behavioral supports, educator recruitment and development, enhanced curricula, instructional methods, and more to lift Black male students to success. And we will. I know that I know it's possible. I went to all Title I schools, right? I am a son of immigrant parents from Bangladesh. I went to schools alongside racially diverse peers, and I know what's possible with great educators, and we need to learn how to scale that. It cannot just be in one school. That experience shaped who I am and put me on this singular drive to ensure that the same opportunities reach many more children. With closing gaps in education at the heart of my work, I recognize that the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately harmed Black students. This is apparent in disproportionate hospitalization rates, dangerous working condition, rates of unemployment, housing and food insecurity, and the loss of family, friends, and community. No matter what metric you choose in this country, we have historically failed our Black youth and populations. And the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on Black community hits hard in academics as well. In states that tested their students this past spring, we saw significant drops in student performance across the board. Where states and local school systems have been steadily improving for the past 5 years, we saw the COVID-19 pandemic, based on testing this past spring, wipe out those gains and some more. National studies continue to show that are coming out as we speak right now, that the greatest drops have impacted our most historically disadvantaged students, especially our Black students. For all these reasons, the task force mission to achieve academic excellence and equity is essential to the work that we do going forward. It underscores the need for real strategies that yield real results and improve student outcomes at scale. An essential part of improving those outcomes is understanding and engaging with our students whose voice, experience, and insight will be critical to the success that we seek to achieve. Thank you for being here today. Today's summit will act to harness your experiences, ideas, and feedback, which will help define the overall strategy and the actionable objectives that will steer the course forward. Together, we can truly accomplish equity and experience for all student groups. And when we uplift Black students, we elevate all students. Thank you for your participation, and I look forward to providing you with leadership and support necessary to bring equity and excellence to every Maryland student. We'll do whatever it takes to work and get it right, giving every Maryland student, including our Black boys, the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choudhury. So before Dr. Hallett, Brandon goes on to introduce our next speaker, I'm going to, from what I understand, there may be some people in the waiting room. So we wanted to just pause for a second and let any additional folks in. So Ms. Rowe, if you could take a look at that. Additionally, I wanted to offer some housekeeping items. There will be an agenda that is dropped into the chat shortly so that everyone can have a sense of the speakers and the flow of the agenda of the program for today. So we will also be recording this for anyone who has to leave early or will have to come in late. This will be available for everyone's viewing. And lastly, in terms of capturing voice, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share your voice. If you hear something that requires clarification, if you have a point that you want to make that supports something a speaker says, please include that in the chat. Additionally, if you are on social media, we want this event and this program to extend beyond this WebEx platform. So if you are on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, please use the hashtag AAEEBB Summit. And that way we can share our insights with a larger audience. So again, that hashtag AAEEBB Summit. And be sure to share and connect with a new friend on social media, because this is district-wide, statewide work, and we want to make sure that we have relationships to build solidarity around this work. So thank you, Ms. Blaha, for putting that in the chat. That is helpful. So with no further ado, we will move on with Dr. Hallett Brandon introducing our next speaker.
Good morning. I am Mary Howlett Brandon, the Equity and Cultural Proficiency Specialist in the Division of Curriculum, Instructional Improvement, and Professional Learning. In my capacity as the Equity Specialist, I work across the department and with local school systems on issues of equity. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vermel D. Green. Dr. Green served as the chairperson for the Task Force on Achieving Academic Equity and Excellence for Black Boys. She is an executive sponsor to the advisory council that was formed to support local school systems and schools in implementing recommendations from the task force. Dr. Green is also a member of the state board. Dr. Green has been an educator for more than 44 years, teaching at the elementary through high school and college levels. Her experience extends to the corporate world, where she was a customer education representative with the Xerox Corporation. She holds degrees from Dickinson College, a BS in biology, George Washington University, an MA in education, and International Seminary, a PhD in Christian education. Dr. Green is an author, education consultant, and conference speaker. She has conducted professional development and training workshops, as well as online classes for thousands of teachers and administrators from coast to coast. Her focus areas include closing the gender achievement gap, educating for character, and managing classrooms effectively. During her tenure with the Prince George's County Public Schools, she served as an administrator at Buck Lodge Middle School. She piloted the school's award-winning character education program, which was featured in area newspapers and on air media. After her retirement from Prince George's County Public Schools, Dr. Green founded Sacred Life Academy for Boys in Capitol Heights. The school's innovative curriculum focused on building character and accommodating the academic, social, developmental, and physical needs of young boys in kindergarten through 8th grade. In recognition of her achievement as principal, she was honored by the Greater Prince George's Business Roundtable, a nonprofit, nonpartisan business alliance of chief executives, and presented with their Outstanding CEO Award. Dr. Green and her husband, Vernon, live in Charles County. They have 2 married children and 6 amazingly beautiful grandchildren. Dr. Green, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Howlett Brandon. It is a pleasure. I tell you, remember those of you who are in my generation, remember that Sam Cooke song? It's been a long time coming, but our change is here. Well, I am just thanking the good Lord for the change that I know is going to be ahead for us. It is my pleasure to be with you, my pleasure to see you all here with a common purpose. I'm not going to take a lot of time because I want to make sure that we leave time for our very special guest, Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu, our speaker of the day. I see that he's signed on, and I am so happy to have him. I'm going to share my screen with our PowerPoint. All right, there we go. So even though our task force on achieving academic equity and excellence for Black boys, that task force no longer exists, it now has rendered its report and moved on to form what's called an advisory council. Before I begin, I want to address a question that I was often asked. Why use the term Black boys? Why not Black males or African American males? Well, I want people to remember that these are children. I think just using the term males, that can refer to a fish, a bird, anything. But these are children, living, breathing children with desires and hopes and dreams for the future. So I wanted people to remember that these are children that we're talking about. Children. And when you're my age, even though they're high school and beyond, to me, they're still children. And I have to update that bio, Dr. Howlett Brandon. Really, it's been 47 years in education. And when I started in Prince George's County in 1974, teaching biology at Northwestern High School. But now, let's get on. I want to open with a story. The story about a rug merchant laying out her beautiful Persian rugs for the market, in the outdoor market. And as she laid out her carpet, she noticed that there was a bump in the carpet. So she went over to that bump and she, with her foot, just stomped it until it was flat. But then it only reappeared in another area. So she went over there and she stomped it again. It appeared in another area and she stomped it again. She kept doing this, stomping and moving around her rug, mangling her beautiful carpet, when finally, it occurred to her, lift it up, and out slithered a very angry snake. Well, you know what? In education, many times we are jumping on bumps without addressing the real issue. For example, when we hear about disproportionate numbers of Black boys in special education, we jump on a bump and we say, okay, well, we just need to hire more special education teachers. There's another bump, lowest test scores. Black boys with the lowest test scores in the state. Even nationally, we jump on a bump and say, okay, we need more money. We need more money. They're least likely to be on the honor roll, least likely or having the lowest attendance rate during the pandemic. So we begin to jump on bumps and stress about how we can rectify this. Least likely to be in honor classes, on the honor roll. Highest high school arrest rate in Maryland are Black boys. So we jump on a bump and we say, okay, we just need to hire more school resource officers. Then we hear about the highest suspension rate. Well, then we just won't suspend. We'll just build a special room and house them there. We won't suspend, or we'll just tolerate their bad behavior. Highest expulsion rate. Oh no, we can't put them out of school. Let's jump on a bump and just have an alternative program. Well, when we look at the highest dropout rate, are Black boys. So we need to, educators, colleagues, we need to stop jumping on bumps. We need to start looking at the real cause of what is going on with our Black boys. That's when the State Board of Education said, you know what, we're going to stop jumping on bumps. Let's look at what's happening. So we recruited and accepted the willingness of 22 people. I call them the 22 busiest people in Maryland. I always heard from my former pastor that the best way to recruit people, or the best people to recruit, are busy people. Because if you're trying to recruit people who aren't doing anything, they're going to continue to not do anything. So I recruited 22 of the busiest people, parents, teachers, principals, superintendents, school board members across the state of Maryland. And when I totaled up their experience, approximately 435 years of experience in education, and we all committed to stop jumping on bumps. We were going to get at the real problem, the real issues affecting our boys. We had, along with me as the chairperson, I had 3 co-chairs, wonderful folks to raise my arms when they got tired. Dr. Joan Melly McCarthy, Senator Gail Bates, who both of these ladies are on the State Board of Education, and Dr. Marcia Sprankle, one of the leaders in MSDE. We decided that we were going to have study groups, and in charge of those study groups, we had Dr. Howard, who you've already met, Mrs. Diane Roberts, a principal in Charles County, and Dr. Ramon Goins, a professor at UMBC. We were going to study this problem, but not just study it to death. We were going to come up with some recommendations to find out exactly what we need to do so we would stop jumping on bumps. We said we were going to investigate what are some of the social, emotional, behavioral supports that are needed. How is it that we can rectify this by recruiting and training skilled, competent teachers and administrators? We also said, let's look at the curricula. Let's look at instructional methods. How is that? How can that be improved? How can that be used to stop jumping on bumps and getting at the real problem? We had the most wonderful group of people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. Clockwise, we have Mr. Dwayne Jones, Mr. Philip Johnson, Ms. Jocelyn Potts, Ms. Tracy Cotman, Ms. Alicia Lee, Mr. Desmond Williams. We also had Dr. Karen Salmon. She was our state superintendent at the time. I told her, come on, Dr. Salmon, it is your motto, equity and excellence. Well, we want it for our Black boys. You have to be part of it. And she was. Mrs. Nicole Fisher, Mr. Hampton Conway III, Dr. John Howard, Dr. Theo Holt. We had Dr. Julius Davis, Pastor Juan Wilder, Mrs. Inez Claggett, Dr. Andrea Kane. All of these individuals started to meet from July 2020, in the midst of the pandemic. And you know, because of the virtual platform that we all had to use during this time, it worked out perfectly so that we could have educators from Queen Anne's County or Montgomery County or from Caroline County. We met from July 2020 to March 21st. We listened to presentations from state and nationally recognized experts and authors, such as our own Dr. Kunjufu, who will be speaking with you later. We discussed literature, research. We had breakout discussions. All that was used to come up with a guide. We didn't want to have another report that we put into someone's file cabinet and forgotten about, as it was in 2005 and 2006. We wanted to have a practical guide that educators and principals and other administrators could use. We came up with 100 plus pages. Now, I'm not just talking about pages with a lot of pictures and graphs, whatever. I'm talking about single space type pages of information from those task force groups. And so no person in their right mind is going to read something that thick with all that writing without having it organized. And that's where this colleague of mine, Dr. Mia Simpson, who's also the executive director at the Maryland State Board of Education, she stepped up to the plate and she lifted my arms once again. And she and I together organized, compiled to put all that information that our wonderful task force members had gathered and researched. And we came up with this, a resource guide for educators. We want this guide to be on the desk of every single educator in the state of Maryland. It's now on our state board's website. You can download it. If you're like me, I like paper, so I'm going to print it out. I'm going to have it. I'm going to take notes. I even put note pages in there so you can take notes and write in your own ideas. What's contained are 16 recommendations. 16 recommendations as to what our task force felt are doable, because these are all educators. The last task force had politicians and businessmen, and I'm not saying anything about politicians or trying to say anything derogatory about business leaders, definitely not. I'm just saying we needed educators this time who could come up with doable recommendations, because We know what it was to sit in front of a classroom of 35 children, some of them who didn't want to be there, and some of our boys sitting in the back wanting to have recess when it was in the middle of our reading lesson. So 16 recommendations that have to do with social emotional behavior report, recruiting and training skilled competent teachers and administrators, and curricular instruction. And in the interest of time, again, I'm not going to go into each one of those recommendations in detail. They are easily accessible, or if you would like to discuss them with me, I'll be more than happy to do so. But what happens is that not only did we have the recommendations now, but our state board president, who has a business background, said, you know what we need, Dr. Green? We need to have proof of concept. We need to recruit some schools. We need to recruit some innovative principals and some superintendents with vision who want to do something, and other than just kicking the can down the road, the problem with our Black boys. We want people who are going to stop jumping on bumps, who are going to do something and get at that angry snake. So we now have 13 pilot schools coming from 8 different districts. We could have had more, but we wanted to have enough that our advisory council would be able to support. We wanted to have enough so that we could train them and prepare them and help them to implement plans for their schools. So we have pilot schools from 8 districts. We have 3 schools from Baltimore County where Dr. Williams is the superintendent. Southwest Academy, Golden Ring, and Pikeville, and those are the names of their principals. Mrs. Franklin, Ms. Mall, Ms. Miller. Thank you all for saying, yes, we're going to do something to help our boys. We have a school from Calvert County where Dr. Daniel Curry is the superintendent. Dr. Joe Sampson is the principal at Calvert County Elementary School. In fact, one of his students, and you might say, wait a minute, he's elementary school students. He's going to be on our program, and we're going to welcome him when he comes. We have 2 schools from Charles County. I'm very sorry, all you other 23 counties, but Charles County is the rockinest county in the state of Maryland, where Dr. Maria Navarro is superintendent and where I have the honor of living. Westlake High School, Mrs. Roberts, J.P. Ryan Elementary School, Dr. Melinda Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry, she is now Dr. Melinda Johnson Tyler. Welcome. We have also from Howard County, where Dr. Michael Martirano is the superintendent, and from Longfellow Elementary School and Running Brook Elementary School, Mr. Derek Anderson and Mr. Anthony Esposito. We have from Kent County, Dr. Karen Couch, and I have to really admire Dr. Martirano and Dr. Couch, because after I presented to the organization for our superintendents, BSAM, they contacted me and said, we want to participate. Thank you, Dr. Martirano. Thank you, Dr. Couch, for saying we want to stop jumping on bumps. We want to do something for our Black boys. We have from Montgomery County, where Dr. Monifa McKnight is the superintendent. We have Francis Scott Key Middle School, where Dr. Norman Coleman is the principal. New Hampshire Estates Elementary School, Mr. Robert Geiger. From Prince George's County, my own stopping grounds, where Dr. Monica Golson is the superintendent. We have one school, Catherine T. Reed Elementary School, where Ms. Nicole Warner is the principal. And in Queen Anne's County, which was formerly the county where Dr. Andrea Kane was the superintendent, and she said, oh, absolutely, this county was going to participate. And Dr. Patricia Salins, her successor, will be working with their principal, Ms. Crystal Chambers in Queen Anne's County. We have an advisory council, as I said. That advisory council, though, will be transitioning soon to an MSDE office, and we will be the first state in the nation to elevate the importance of achieving academic equity and excellence for Black boys to the state level. There are some cities that have done it, Oakland, Seattle, Philadelphia. They have done it at the city level, but we're doing it at the state level. And in talking with Mr. Choudhury, we know that this is at the part of his plan and vision for our state as well. I'm going to close with another story. You may have heard it before about starfish being washed up on the beach. Out of the water, they're slowly dying because they're out of their element. And a man walked up one day and saw a young boy going across the beach, taking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. And he said, "Young man, what are you doing? There are thousands and thousands of those starfish. What possible difference could you make?" And as he picked up another starfish and threw it into the ocean, he says, "I'm making a difference in that one's life." So we have colleagues, teachers, administrators, superintendents. We've got over 154,000 starfish. I call them Black boys and young men in the state of Maryland. We may not be able to save them all, but we can save the 100 or 500 that you have in your school. You can save them by one, by the dozens, by the scores. There are many. And this is an issue for every single district in Maryland, because if our Black boys are in trouble, so are we all. Whether your population of Black boys is 10% in certain school districts, or if your population of Black boys is 50% in your school districts, we must help them all. This is something that we can no longer ignore. This is something that we can no longer kick down the can for another generation of educators to handle. I've been in the state of Maryland as an educator for 47 years. And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, during that time, I've seen a lot of initiatives and great ideas come and go because we lacked the people who are passionate and determined to make a difference. Well, I hope and pray that the individuals that are on this conference, this summit, this state, the individuals in the pilot schools, the principals, the superintendents, that you will share the passion and say, no longer, no longer. Because if our Black boys are in trouble, so are we all. Thank you for your time and attention. We're going to do this because the time is now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. Your leadership has been so inspiring and motivational for all of us, and your enthusiasm is just so wonderful. At this time, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu. Dr. Kunjufu was educated at Morgan State, Illinois State, and Union Graduate School, and has been a consultant to most urban school districts for decades. He has authored over 40 books, including national bestsellers, and among those bestsellers are Black Students, Middle-Class Teachers, Keeping Black Boys Out of Special Education, Raising Black Boys, Understanding Black Male Learning Styles, Changing School Culture for Black Males, and Educating Black Girls. And we can't forget his latest two books, Raising Black Girls and COVID-16-19. Thank you, Dr. Kunjufu, for joining us today, and we are really looking forward to your words of wisdom.
If Dr. Kunjufu is speaking, he should take himself off of mute.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Very good. I want to first of all commend the task force on their 16 excellent recommendations. And I want to dedicate this to the 154,000 Black boys in the state of Maryland. My keynote comes from my book titled Changing School Culture for African American Males. And I want to first of all challenge every person on the virtual panel to ask themselves, what percent of your students are African American males? It's very important that we disaggregate the numbers, because all is not well in the state of Maryland. For example, in simple math, you could have 25% white male students, 25% white female students, 25% Black female students, 25% Black male students. You could have white students scoring at the 80th percentile on state exams. You could have Black students scoring at the 40th percentile on state exams. But it appears from a district perspective that the district is scoring at the 60th percentile. But that's an 80% to 40% range. The median was 60%. So unless we just aggregate the scores, we'll never get a chance to fully understand the complexity of the problem. So what percent of your students are African American males in your school? That should be the same percentage of special ed students, the same percentage of students retained, the same percent that are in remedial classes, the same percent that are suspended, that drop out. Let me just look at this next point, male teachers. If 25% of your students are African American males in your school or in your district, or 25% of your teachers African American male students, is the future of the Black race in the hands of white female teachers? I'm now spending literally 3 days a week nationwide, primarily working with white female teachers who in college were never given a course in understanding Black male learning styles, understanding Black male culture. So is your school in gender compliance? One of the recommendations that came from the task force was number 2.4. And I want to emphasize the key words in 2.4. In-service training for all teachers. That's the first point I want to emphasize, all teachers. There are 6 types of teachers in Maryland. First of all, we have custodians. Those are the ones that graduated in 1991 using the same lesson plans 30 years later, custodians. Then we have referral agents. They don't teach, they refer. And the research shows 20% of the teachers are making 80% of the referrals for suspension and special education. Then we have missionaries. They believe the children are culturally deprived. If they simply accepted their culture, then their problems would be resolved. Then we have instructors who believe they teach subjects, not children. And then we have you, master teachers, who understand there should be a congruence between learning styles and pedagogy. And then we have coaches who bond with the students. Now back to recommendation 2.4. What hurts me nationwide, Dr. Green, is when school districts bring me in and they make the meeting voluntary. If the meeting is voluntary, then I'm probably speaking to master teachers and coaches. I'm not speaking to the teachers that need it the most, custodians, referral agents, missionaries, and instructors. The next point of 2.4 was continual, that one workshop in and of itself is not enough. that we need to have continual workshops throughout the year. And then culturally responsive pedagogy. Now, what do we mean by culturally responsive pedagogy? Let me first of all ask the question, how many continents are there? If a continent is a large body of land with water on all four sides, are there really 7 of them? Culturally responsive pedagogy. On your body, where is your kitchen? Some people know the answer to that question, and some don't. How can we reduce the overusage of the N-word? And many Black boys have become so creative, they make a distinction between N-I-G-G-E-R and N-I-G-G-A. But my question is, how would Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, how would they feel about the use of the N-word? Culturally responsive pedagogy. What exactly is the brown bag test? What are the language arts skills needed to play the dozens? We would love to come back to your school and give a 3 to 6 hour workshop on culturally responsive pedagogy. And in culturally responsive pedagogy, we don't use terms like at risk. There's nothing at risk about Black boys. They are at potential. They are at promise. We don't believe in the cultural deficit model. Our mission statement, one of them goes like this: if the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. We want the responsibility on the teacher, not on the 154,000 Black boys in Maryland. Black boys are different. They're not deficient. They're relational learners. And I could spend 3 days just looking at this first point. The Black boys are relational learners. Let me give you the second mission statement. There can be no significant learning until we first establish a significant relationship. Black boys need to know that you like them, that you respect them, that you understand their culture, that you love them. Bonding. We have a 3-hour workshop just on bonding. There are techniques that are needed to bond with students. Black boys, I repeat, are
Excuse me,
relational.
excuse me, Dr. Kunjufu. I am so sorry. You are on a roll and I'm loving it. Are you supposed to be advancing your slides?
Now I want to keep this one right here.
Okay, I am so sorry. Thank you. Carry on. Good stuff. Thank you.
So the second step is relational learner, is the need to bond with your students. And there are techniques that are necessary that are part of recommendation 2.4 on the success and techniques needed to bond with your students. In order to maximize relational learners, we need teachers to give high expectations. His name was Malcolm Little, a brilliant 8th grade honor roll student. And Mr. Swansky's 8th grade teacher asked Malcolm Little, what did he want to be? And Malcolm Little said he wanted to be a lawyer. Mr. Swansky broke Malcolm's spirit that day and told Malcolm Little, you can't be a lawyer. Why don't you be a carpenter? Those words. See, Satan will tell you sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. But Proverbs 18:21 says death and life are in the power of the tongue, the power of words. And some teachers, especially custodians, referral agents, missionaries, and instructors, have used harsh words that have destroyed the spirits of Black boys. It is nothing worse than see a Black boy whose spirit has been broken. So Malcolm Little became Detroit Red. He dropped out of school because of the words of his teacher. And it was the words of Elijah Muhammad that gave him a culturally responsive pedagogy, a culturally responsive curriculum. It's a shame that literally you have to go to jail to learn that Imhotep, not Hippocrates, is the father of medicine. Again, we would love to come back to your school and provide a workshop on culturally responsive pedagogy. There's nothing wrong with Black boys. They're simply relational learners. The other aspect is that Black boys are oral learners. They're kinesthetic learners. They're tactile learners. What percent of your lesson plans are right brain? There's a lack of congruence between lesson plans and pedagogy, between lesson plans and learning styles. You don't give left brain lesson plans to right brain learners. As Dr. Green mentioned with regards to bumps, you don't give a bump special ed just because you have not given an oral lesson plan, a tactile lesson plan, a kinesthetic lesson plan. I'm having difficulties moving, Dr. Green, my PowerPoint now.
Did you want to maybe pause just for a second and refresh maybe the screen? I'm not sure if it froze.
Well, I can work with this thing as is. I just didn't know why it was frozen.
Yeah, it's on the gender compliance slide.
Dr. Kunjufu, is that what you're seeing on your computer? Are you seeing the gender compliance slide? Because it
Yes.
doesn't look like, okay, can you maybe hit the space bar? Maybe that'll make it go to the next slide.
Let's
You
don't
click
worry
on your
about it.
PowerPoint. Okay.
Okay, moving on. But before I leave this major point, one of my earlier books is titled Understanding Black Male Learning Styles. And we would love to return back to your school and give a workshop on right brain lesson plans, right brain learning styles. There's nothing wrong with Black boys. They are simply oral learners. The solution is not special ed, remedial reading. The solution is not alternative schools. The solution is not suspensions. Black boys need oral lesson plans, kinesthetic lesson plans. They need tactile lesson plans. Hear me clearly. There's a disconnect between most teachers' lesson plans and Black boys' learning styles. When you're a master teacher, you teach the way your children learn. When you're a custodian, you teach the way you learn. And we need to make sure we are teaching the way our children learn. Black boys deserve better. Let's move on. Another unique aspect, Dr. Green, for Black boys is the peer group. There's nothing that Black boys value more than their peer group. The problem is most Black peer groups feel that academic achievement is feminine, that it's Eurocentric. We are not going to successfully teach African American males until we change the peer group culture. We need to convince the Black peer group that academic achievement is masculine, that academic achievement is Afrocentric. Until we're able to do that, then we're going to lose the 154,000 Black boys in Maryland. Now, one of the ways that we can correct the problem of negative peer pressure is by implementing cooperative learning. And in cooperative learning, we're recommending if we have a class of 20 students, 10 females and 10 males, we're recommending 2 groups of male students and 2 groups of female students, where males are working together. And Black boys, the last thing they want to do is to lose in anything to Black and white females. If we implement cooperative learning, if we implement single gender cooperative learning, then we have a chance at infusing the peer group to value academics. It has gotten so bad in many schools. When Black boys are doing well in school, they're teased. They're accused of acting white, acting feminine. I repeat, we are not going to successfully change the culture of African American males until we first of all change the culture of African American male peer group. Let's move on. Another tremendous component of understanding Black males is cool pose. Can anybody tell me how much Chris Paul received for his 4-year latest contract?
Too much.
Well, it's a little more than too much. This 37-year-old point guard is going to be paid $40 million per year for 4 years. Black boys are not convinced that education is the great equalizer. Black boys believe there are 3 other ways to get paid. I mean, really get paid. And what are those 3 ways they believe they can get paid better than in education? What are they? Now, really, there's only one sport, and that's the NBA, the National Black Association. Now, what percent of the NBA is African American?
I'd guess 75.
Class, it's 86%.
80.
Now, what percent of the doctors and engineers are African American?
30.
Can we lower that to 2%?
Oh, wow.
I want you to write this down. This is what we're competing against.
Seriously?
86% of the NBA is African American. Only 2% of the engineers and doctors are African American. We're competing against cool pose culture. They believe they have a better chance of going pro in the NBA than becoming an engineer or a doctor. Now, what are the 2 other ways they believe they can get paid? Sports is one. What are the other 2?
Entertainment and drugs.
Entertainment and drugs. Now, how many teachers in Maryland on the first day, the first week, the first month provide information documenting the chances are still better with a good education than going pro in the NBA, becoming a rapper, or becoming the first drug dealer never to be caught. We have to compete against cool pose culture. Our children are not convinced, our boys are not convinced that education is the great equalizer. Let's move on as we wind down. Only 12, I want to now move into the category of reading. Only 12% of Black boys by 8th grade are proficient in reading. My first point, girls mature faster than boys. Many educators in many schools expect boys to learn how to read at the same time as girls. Number two, in 1940, American schools moved away from phonics. That is one of the best ways to teach Black boys how to read. But we have a collection of books, Dr. Green, titled Best Books for Boys. Be honest, do you read everything, or do you read that interests you? For most of us, we read that interests us. The challenge is many Black boys have never been given a book where they saw themselves in the book. They saw themselves in the storyline. They bonded with the characters. They loved the book so much, they could not put the book down. When has a Black boy ever in Maryland found a book they loved so much they could not put it down? I guarantee you, we can raise reading test scores if we give Black boys the collection of books titled Best Books for Boys. Give them books that they love, that challenge them, where they see themselves in the culture. Now, I know my time is limited. Let me just recap. Black boys are not at risk. They're at potential. They're at promise. We need teachers who understand Black boys are relational learners. We need teachers who will bond with our students, who will give them high expectations. We need teachers who understand Black male learning styles, who will provide more right brain lesson plans, oral lesson plans, tactile lesson plans, kinesthetic lesson plans. We need to allow more movement in the classroom. We also need to have teachers who understand the significance and the impact that the peer group has on our students. When I was growing up in the 1900s, the greatest influence on children was the home, followed by school, and then church. Home, school, church. It's now 2021. Can anybody now tell me what is the number one influence on children, especially Black boys, in 2021?
Media.
Social media is number one. What's number two?
The boys in the neighborhood.
So the peer group is the number two influence after social media, and music and video games are tied for third. If teachers don't do anything else, they need to understand their competition. Social media, the peer group, music, and video games. And then last but not least, cool pose. We need to do everything we possibly can, Dr. Green, to show that education really is the great equalizer. But unless we understand our competition, unless we understand the impact that sports, music, and drugs has on Black boys, we will continue to lose. The task force, the advisory council, gave us 16 excellent recommendations. I recommend you implement all 16. Thank you very, very much for allowing me to be your keynote speaker this morning. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Kunjufu. I don't know if you've had a chance to see all the wonderful comments in the chat box, but everybody is really inspired by your words and by your message, and I hope that this makes a change in Maryland. I know that we're planting the seeds and those seeds will grow, and thank you for helping us to do this. So we're going to go to a 10-minute break now. I'm going to put up a 10-minute break.
So Ms. Rowe,
I'm going to put up a 10.
Ms. Rowe, if I could interrupt you for 1 second, I think we have a little bit more time where we could maybe get some questions from the chat for Dr. Kunjufu. Dr. Kunjufu, can you stay around for a little bit and answer some
Yes,
questions?
I was prepared for a Q&A. Should I click
Okay.
on stop sharing?
Yeah, if you could stop sharing. And what we're going to ask our audience to do so that we can call people in order, we're going to ask you to put the word frog. We'll use that. Put the word frog into the chat. And that way we know that you have a question. It looks like they're coming up quickly. It looks like KP Gonzalez and Hudson have questions, and then we'll just take them in order from there with we may not get to everybody, but we'll start off with, looks like KP Gonzalez. If you could come off of mute and ask Dr. Kunjufu your question.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I was wondering, I was taking notes. Was it right brain versus left brain lesson plans, or left brain versus right brain lesson plans?
Well, it doesn't matter. The main point is that when you understand Black male learning styles, there should be a congruence between your lesson plans and their learning styles. If you understand that Black boys are primarily right brain learners, oral, visual, kinesthetic, tactile, then you give lesson plans congruent with their learning styles. So if your students are right brain learners, then you need to give right brain lesson plans. If your students are left brain learners, then you give your students left brain lesson plans. The main point, there should be a congruence between your lesson plans and their learning styles. You don't teach the way you want to teach. You teach the way your children learn.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank
Thank
you. We
you.
now have, it looks like Hudson has a question.
My apologies. I don't have.
Okay. All right, so we have JLOND with the question.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Well, I wanted to know about your contact information, and do you consult with parents? Like if a parent wanted to reach out with you as it relates to their own child with some questions and and wanting to get some support with your advice as it relates to their own child in the public school system. Do you do that type of work? And is there a contact information that you could share with us if you possibly do that?
Well, let me first of all answer the contact information. Our telephone number is 708-672-4909. 708-672-4909. Our email address is customer SVC at AfricanAmericanImages.com. Customer SVC at AfricanAmericanImages.com. We provide workshops for teachers, for administrators, for parents, and motivational assemblies for students. And let me share this. One of my earlier books is titled Raising Black Boys, and there's also one titled Raising Black Girls. Now you're gonna love this little tidbit. I have a concept that says some mothers, not all, some mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. They make their daughters come in early and not their sons. They make their daughters study and not their sons. They make their daughters do chores and not their sons. They make their daughters go to church and not their sons. We have some 40-year-old boys still at home with their mothers. What are the classroom implications of trying to teach a mama's boy? A mother who always overprotects their son, who believes he can do no wrong. What are the classroom implications for the teacher trying to educate a mama's boy? Next question, Daryl.
All right, thank you. So, Frank, do you have a question? Frank Malone? Okay, no word from Frank. Let's go to Charlotte Avery. Charlotte Avery, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, trying to find a quieter place for kids. You mentioned the types. Is it okay if I have a few questions?
You can go ahead and start with one. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I will go to these. Uh,
Well, the
do you
six
have
types of teachers,
recommendations?
the six types of teachers again were custodians, referral agents, missionaries, instructors, master teachers, and coaches. And Black boys need more master teachers and coaches and less custodians, referral agents, missionaries, and instructors. We're recommending, Dr. Green, looping. Can you imagine a school that first and second grade looped, third and fourth grade looped, fifth and sixth grade looped, seventh and eighth grade looped? We could put all this hysteria to rest. There was nothing wrong with Black boys. They simply needed consecutive master teachers who bonded with them, who understood their learning styles, who made the peer group value academic achievement, and had a good argument against school post culture. Looping with master teachers. Go on to your question, Charlotte. I apologize.
No, you did a great, thank you for that. Do you have recommendations for how we can bring those same teacher types that are missing from talks like these today to the table?
Well, I thought you and I were friends. Why would you ask me a question like that? That was one of the concerns that Dr. Green had with regards to the task force and their desire, which is still a significant issue. And that is Black boys nationwide are 17%, I'm sorry, Black students are 17% of the students nationwide. 8.5% are African-American males, but 83% of America's elementary school teachers are white and female, and only 2% are African-American male. So the task force has excellent recommendations on how to increase the percentage of African-American male teachers. The reality, though, in the current school year 2021-22, we're not going to be able to increase that percent from 2% to 8% or to 17%. So we have to work with the teachers that we have. We have to empower white female teachers to understand Black culture, Black male culture, Black male learning styles, how to bond with them, how to raise their expectations, how to relate to them, on and on and on. Now, there's an excellent program called Call Me Mr., which attempts to provide a collegiate experience to increase the numbers of African American male teachers.
This is
Thank
Frank
you.
Malone. Can
How
I
you
get
doing,
on
Frank?
and get my question in?
Sure. Go ahead,
First
Mr.
of all,
Malone.
we have high respect for your work. I followed you from the very beginning. My question is with regards to rites of passage, young Black men, and fatherhood leaders coming into the schools to capture their imagination with skilled facilitation. Can you respond, please?
Yes, Frank, and it's good to see you again. I rushed through my presentation when I mentioned the peer group, but I forgot to include there, beside cooperative learning and single gender cooperative learning groups, is peer mentoring. That's where you have a fifth grader mentoring a third grader, a seventh grade mentoring a fifth grader, an 11th grader mentoring a ninth grader. We need to do everything possible, Frank, to use the peer group to reinforce academic achievement. And one of the ways to do that, and it's also in the document that Dr. Green and her committee developed on peer mentoring. It's also in the document the significance of rites of passage. In Maryland, the 154,000 Black boys, as you know, Frank, do not know what it means to be a man because they've never been taught by responsible adults what manhood is. So some boys think going to jail or making a baby or killing someone or smoking or drinking or killing someone makes a man. We need to take that over. We need responsible men like you, Frank, and people like you that will teach our boys rites of passage. And until we increase, Darrell Howard, the percent of Black male teachers, we need to have a Black male mentoring group. We need to have 20 to 100 men once a week, once a month, coming in to visit and to be role models to our male students. Any other questions or comments?
All right.
Come to DC and do the conference. I'm calling you.
Thank you, Mr. Malone, for your questions. So we have a few more minutes. We'll try and get another 2 questions in. Looks like Marcy Jackson was up next. She wrote, any suggestions for school psychologists to support our work?
Well, one of the concerns we would recommend for school psychologists is the IEP. This meeting is a very sensitive meeting, and it shows that schools are middle-class institutions. The IEP is scheduled for Wednesday at 12 o'clock. It's designed for educators and psychologists. So at 11:30, the school principal, the school psychologist, the special ed coordinator, the social worker, and the teacher arrive at 11:30. At 12 o'clock, the low-income Black, female, single parent arrives. You're not feeling me yet. I want you to put yourself in the position of the low-income Black, single, female parent. When you walk in, you feel like you've already been talked about, that the decision has already been made. We talk a lot about code blue in the police department, but there's also a code blue among educators who will bond and side with each other rather than doing what's best for the child. There's a real thin line between a Black boy being placed in special ed and a gifted and talented class. The Black boy was given 30 math problems to do in 30 minutes. He did them in 20 minutes and was not given anything else to do by the teacher. So you know what he did? He acted up. Was the problem with Willie? Was the problem with the teacher and her poor classroom management? We need school psychologists who will become better advocates for Black and Hispanic boys, boys of color.
Fantastic. Thank you,
you.
Dr. Kunjufu. So we have Casey, and then we're going to, I think we'll allow Roni to be the last question before we go to break. So Casey, and then Roni can ask your questions.
Good morning. Thank you so much. So Dr. Kunjufu, you had talked about how white teachers, are dominant in the profession, right? And I guess talking about, and their lack of awareness of the culture of our Black students. So I guess, is there a concern? And if so, what suggestions do you have when providing this training, especially to white teachers, that there's not overgeneralization or stereotyping that occurs?
Well, excellent question. Now I'm going to need 6 hours to answer this question. First of all, let me make this point clear. It is not the race of the teacher, nor the gender of the teacher that's most significant. It is their ability to bond with the student, their expectations of the students, and understanding their learning styles. Let me translate. What that then means is that a white female teacher could be more effective than even a Black male teacher if the white female teacher bonds with the students, gives high expectations, and understands their learning styles and the impact of peer pressure, school polls, and the need for best books for boys. Now, that being said, even an effective white female teacher needs to use peer mentoring and adult mentoring so that boys see Black men academically sound that can make a difference in their lives. Last but not least, we don't need any more white teachers who say, I don't see color. I see children as children. The first step is that we need teachers to admit that race, that culture is a factor. The second step is to understand the culture. And the third step is to appreciate the culture. When you say you don't see color, what you are saying is that you don't see me. You don't see me as being African American. You don't see me being male. You don't see my uniqueness. You don't see my learning styles. You don't know how to bond with me because you don't see me.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. And last question, Roni, are you still with us?
I am still here. As a white female middle school teacher of 7th grades, I see many of my Black boys struggling, and I appreciate, I'm going to get emotional, but I appreciate that you said they're not at risk, they're at potential. And my initial question was about cool pose, and could you elaborate on that? And how can I break through that barrier with them?
Well, again, Ronnie, it's going to take longer than probably only have 2 minutes left. But you need to come up with arguments that education, there's a greater chance for them becoming a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, a lawyer, whatever the career is you want to emphasize, over going pro in the NBA. Let me just give an example. There were 1 million Black males in high school that wanted to go pro in the NBA. Of this million, only 400,000 will even make their high school team. Of this 400,000, only 4,000 make the college team. Of this 4,000, only 35 make it to the NBA. Of this 35, only 7 start. And the average longevity in the NBA is 4 years. You got 1 million Black males looking for 7 full-time jobs that last 4 years. You need to create a poster with that kind of information for the NBA. You need to have posters talking about all the rappers who are broke. See, those videos don't tell the truth. Most rappers are broke. They signed a bad contract. The money goes to the producer and to the distributor, not to them. And then challenge them. They don't know one drug dealer who has sold drugs for 40 years, retired, and now living on a pension. Drug dealers don't retire. They either use, they go to jail, or they die. That's how we defeat cool poles. But our children see more of cool poles than they do of sound, academic, Black male role models.
Wow.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Dr. Kunjufu. Everybody take a deep breath, right? And kind of just let all of that seep in. We have absorbed and digested a lot of information, so I think it's appropriate that we have our break right now. Dr. Kunjufu, as I said last night in our brief overview, I'm a big fan of your work, and I appreciate your lifelong contributions to this particular area in which you have shared with us today. So if everybody could put a shout out in the chat to Dr. Kunjufu so he can see the love that he is receiving from you all. Thank you so much, Dr. Kunjufu.
Thank you
And
so
Ms.
much.
Rowe, if you can take us to break with what the protocol is for that, because we do want to give individuals an opportunity to grab a snack, use the restroom, or stretch their legs.
I'm going to put up a 10-minute timer and hopefully play some jazz music in the background, unless my bandwidth won't accept both of them at the same time, but I'm going to give it a try. I know my internet seems to be a little shaky this morning. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, and if you just want to know how much time is left, just come back and look at your screen, and because it will count down. Thank you all for joining us
Ms.
this
Rowe?
morning. We've got a lot of thinking to do.
Ms. Rowe, may I make one
Yes.
comment? Our pilot
Absolutely.
schools, you have the resources to invite Dr. Kunjufu for professional development. You have the resources. If you don't know how to contact him, you can contact the advisory council, and we would be more than happy to give you his contact information. These are the kind of resources. So if you have people on your staff and you're saying, wow, I wish our so-and-so department or our other department, if they could hear him, you can make it happen, pilot schools. Go for it. Thank you, Dr. Kunjufu.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
Okay, we're going to go to break. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry to do this to you. These slides are supposed to change automatically, and they're not. So this is at 2 minutes. When it gets to 3 minutes, would you just hit the arrow? Here's the cursor. Just hit the arrow and change it to 7, and just when it hits the minute. Okay.
Hi, Cecilia.
Change on its own, but for some reason it's not.
Cecilia, this is Mia.
So
We can hear you.
when it gets to 3, I hit the arrow.
You hit the arrow, and then when it gets to 4, you hit it again. Just got it. It's counting down.
Okay.
Our voices are being heard.
Hi, Cecilia and Marsha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that I can still hear you. So.
Okay. Thank you. Should we do that?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back. Welcome back. That was a much needed break, but it took too long because I am ready to get started with the next segment of our summit. As a young man who came into this profession, writing my master's thesis on culturally responsive strategies and techniques for African American boys back in the 90s. I know I don't look like I graduated with my master's degree back in the 90s. I wrote that master's thesis with the intent of doing this work that we're doing today. I am very excited for this next segment of our summit today. This is where we hear the most important voice on this platform. This is where we get to hear the voice of our Black male students from across the state of Maryland. I'm going to make sure that everyone is here. So, Michael, if you could just say hello if you're here.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Michael is here. Is Kevin here? Kevin. Okay, let me go to Drake Smith.
Hello and good morning.
Hello, Drake Smith. Good to see you. And Marcellus.
Good morning.
All right, fantastic. I think I heard everybody here so far except for Kevin. He may have had a technical issue, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our conversation. Again, just like I was excited to listen to Dr. Kunjufu, who is the wise elder sharing information about what we need to do across our state for African American boys. But now we get to hear from the young men who are actually in our schools. And the first question that I have for them, and I'll start off with Drake. I'm going to ask that you just introduce yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, these young men, their bios are in our agenda. So we can drop that again so that you have access to their full bio. But I'm just going to ask them to say hello, their connection to this work, and why they think this initiative is important and the difference that it can make. So I'm going to ask Drake Smith to get us started. Tell us who you are and respond to those questions. And then we will go to Marcellus and then Michael.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Howard, and good morning, everyone. Well, my name is Drake Smith, and I was a student member of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education from the 2020 to the 2021 school year. I'm a recent graduate of Meade Senior High School in Anne Arundel County. So that's my connection to this work, and I guess why is this work going to be so different? Well, I think just because I've never really seen or heard anything like this, during my schooling. I was actually on a bus trip to to the Eastern Shore and Ocean City a few weeks ago. It was called Maryland's Freedom Summer Ride, and Darius A. Stanton, he's a prominent civic leader here in Anne Arundel County, has a morning talk show, and we were in Salisbury and he was giving a speech, and they kind of asked him a similar question: why is this so different? Why is this so different? He said, because we're going to be bold for good. Be bold for good. So this is not going to be like a one-off thing, a one-time thing. This is something that's going to be ongoing work, and that's what I'm really excited about. We're going to be bold for good.
Right, fantastic. Thank you, Drake. And Marcellus.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Marcellus McQueen. I attend Renaissance High School in Bourbon County Public Schools. I'm the class president for my class and also serve on the Racial Equity and Diversity Committee for Bourbon County. I'm very excited about this because I love talking about equity because I know that we have some serious challenges. I've experienced them, and I'm happy that we're finally taking the time to address it because this has been long overdue. So the fact that we're all here and we're actually trying to get stuff done makes me proud.
All right, thank you, Marcellus. And Michael, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Michael Washington. I am attending Westlake High School right now. I'm a class of 2022. So I'm really excited about this thing because I move around a lot of places. I've seen a lot of things. So I'm just glad it's about to get done and everything. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And lastly, is Kevin with us yet? Kevin. Okay, so Kevin may not be here yet, but I am excited to have Kevin join us at some point. Kevin is our student member of the board for the State Department of Education. So he represents all students across the 24 districts in the state. So I assume he will be joining us soon. So I will go back to Marcellus, and I will ask the question. So you mentioned that there have been some challenges in your schooling. Can you talk to us first about what have been some of the things that have been positive experiences for you in school? Have you had a trusted adult that has supported you and mentored you through your experience? What did it feel like to be supported and empowered in school? Talk to us about some of the positive experiences that you're having.
Yeah, I can do that. So, I guess a positive experience is when me like identifying and embracing my color. I feel as though when I grew up, I started school. I went to John and Guy Howard in the state. That's where I was born and raised until I moved out to the county. And growing up, just watching stuff happen towards my eyes, I started to like be scared of my color because I know that I'm born with stripes against me and all that type of stuff. So I was scared of my color in that way. But from the early age, I had 7 siblings, and I want to become an educator. So, my biggest thing was I wanted to be a teacher. My mom's a teacher, and all this. So education runs in me. So I was like, okay, I want to do this. But growing up, I'd never seen anybody like me as a teacher. No man, no black man, no black. It's really hard. So growing up through elementary to middle school, I started to get lost inside of that. I feel as though I didn't want to become a teacher anymore. I lost my passion for it. And growing up as a black man, you have the ideals. I think we talked about it already. You either go into sports, you go into some type of field that they already have for you, made out for you, like they have your life plan. So going to education was a very I was like, well, you're crazy. Why do you do that? I still get looks like that today, like, oh, teacher, why do you want to do that? And so when I got to middle school is when I started to fade out off of it. Like, I don't think I should do this because I don't see any black men that are teachers. So I always grew up around white women as my teachers. And so nothing wrong against that. It's just that I feel as though I didn't have the experiences where I saw a diverse group of powerful educators. So I started losing my passion. And then I went to Renaissance High School, where it's a predominantly black school. And I mean, I walked in there and it was like heaven. I had every black male from the top to the bottom, from the principal to department chairs. And I was just like, it sparked something back into me. And so every time I go into that building, I try to talk about education. I just sit there and watch all these powerful black men do what they're doing best. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can see myself doing that. So I think that is what has been my most proudest experience, is going through that trial of not seeing myself. Or not even just, it starts even from the beginning of the books that I read. I never been able to identify myself inside of what I read. The content that I received was always about a white person. I never got to see that. So getting to high school, I was able to navigate into different experiences, and that really helped me grow as a person. And I'm excited for all that.
So everybody, I don't know if you're excited when you listen to Marcellus talk, but I see the teacher in him. So give him some love in the chat, because I really see the teacher, the professor, the one who is delivering knowledge and information to young people. So I'm happy that you are pursuing that goal, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us. So I'm gonna go back to Michael and ask him about what are some of the positive experiences that he has had in schools. I know your principal recommended you to be on this panel. So I know she must have seen you. You must be involved in different things. Talk to us about your experiences in school.
Well, positive experience for me was like engineering class, doing hands-on work like building circuits. Also, since I play basketball, I'll be on the basketball team where I'm like kind of like the leader of the team. So also, since I grew up in a lot of places like Germany, Cali, I've got like a lot of experience with other people, so it's easier for me to connect with others. But yeah, this positive experience for me was kind of like having fun. Honestly, that's really it. I got nothing else to say.
Awesome. Having fun is important, and I'm glad to hear about your leadership in in school in your engineering classes. I believe I saw your bio and it said you had an interest in aerospace science. But yeah, so thank you for sharing your experiences, and we'll go to Drake. Tell us about your experiences, sir.
Well, I think over my 12 years of public school, the best experience with a teacher or even a staff member is when I can have these heart-to-heart conversations. I think a lot of people put school in a bubble, like it's all work, and you can't really have these deep conversations. If it's not in the textbook, you can't talk about it. 2015, Freddie Gray was killed in Baltimore, and I was watching on the news. My grandfather, I really didn't know how to react, and heard nothing about it in school. Right, the only mention they made of it was because we were supposed to have a field trip to the Baltimore Zoo, and that would have threatened our the riots would have threatened our field trip to get canceled. And that was the only concern the teachers really showed, and I was just shocked. I was like, why aren't we talking about this in the school? I mean, I have a lot to really unpack here. Luckily, I could talk about it with my parents, but I would say when George Floyd was killed, my senior year, complete change. I mean, we had all types of conversations and just felt really good to know that my teachers knew what I was going through, and if they didn't know, they were trying to understand. So really, those heart-to-heart conversations were the best part of school.
So I'm gonna stay with you for 1 second, Drake, because I know that you said you didn't feel like you had a place to kind of unpack some of the things that were happening in our society. And I know as a student member of the board, you've led some work around Black Lives Matter initiatives and so on. Can you speak to us about that and what that experience was like?
Yeah. So twice on the Board of Education. One was in the summer, and then one was in the I would say the winter. I had our Board of Education state publicly the phrasing Black Lives Matter, and I did this just because as a Black student, in 2015, there was no mention of Black Lives Matter in school. There was really no mention of it's like I was just a student, right? And they tried to see no color, which I think it did a lot of damage. And talking to other Black students, it did do a lot of damage. But this Black Lives Matter, I wanted to make sure that the school board said it, just because once students heard that, then they would feel safe and comfortable to, be able to express themselves. Okay, well, the school board said it, so maybe I can say this to my teacher or my administrator. But then, it's all about action, right? Action speaks louder than words. So then our school system, we put on what we call Let's Talk Justice. And that's where students actually got together in forums like this, countywide. They're all on YouTube. You can look up AACPS, Let's Talk Justice. And they just talked about these contemporary issues, civil rights issues, LGBTQ plus issues, women's issues. And it was very interesting just to see that, a lot of these students had lived experiences just like me, and that it was really eye-opening for the teachers. I think that the teachers, the administrators, I think they got the most out of it because they just weren't hearing these conversations with students. But as students, we have these conversations all the time in the lunchroom whenever we have downtime. But now we're finally including the rest of the community.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us, Drake. And shout out to Lincoln University. I don't know if you mentioned that that's where you will be attending in the fall. As a person from Pennsylvania, I have love for our Pennsylvania state schools. So congratulations on that, on the HBCU that you will be attending.
Thank you.
So I hear that Kevin is now on the line. Kevin, are you with us yet? I know you had a technical difficulty.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Awesome. Kevin's here, everybody. So, Kevin, if you could introduce yourself, tell them your connection to this panel discussion, some of your experiences in school. That would be great, and we'll catch you up.
Yeah, just a quick summary about me. I've served as last year I served as a student member on the Washington County Board of Education, and now this year I currently serve as student member on the Maryland State Board of Education. And I've just been really interested in working with equity and dealing with all the systematic effects that it has in our school system. And so I've been really interested in this discussion. And do you just talk about? Do you have a question, or do you just talk briefly about school experiences?
Yeah, if you could just talk about your school experiences, some things that you found that have been positive for you and have led you to really to the place that you are now.
So definitely, I feel like a key thing has been said throughout this conference. I do remember is having teachers that show respect and that really like communicate towards you, and that's definitely been essential to me. Having those supportive teachers in my life that guided me. Like for example, when I first started high school, having my SG advisor at the time just really pushed me to areas where I might have been uncomfortable, but challenged me in a good and productive way. But also other teachers supporting me. And throughout all this, having that support. But also, I know that in school, I've had it in a pretty easy time, I guess, throughout high school. But I do remember whenever in elementary school or whenever in these programs, I was put in ESOL, English as a second language, because I spoke French first. That was my first language. And so really like getting to see the way the disparities were, it really shaped my view and going into later education. And then it really just made me passionate about just looking at disparities and seeing why do they exist, like questioning, always asking those hard-hitting questions. And that's really been a key guiding principle for me. But I also do know other students have it so much worse than me. And so what can I learn from them? How can I advocate for them? Those have been those guiding questions, which have always shaped me as a person and continue to shape my school experiences.
Guiding questions. I love it. I love hearing from these young men. Thank you, Kevin. So I want to go back to Marcellus with the next question. And because you four have shared such positive experiences, you are obviously leaders in your school and your ability to communicate what your experiences have been. What I want to hear now is tell me about some of the students that are marginalized students in schools. Some of our Black boys who are not doing well, who are not performing at the same level. What are the challenges that you see that exist? Like, what are we missing as educators? What do we need to do differently that will help us to reach and teach those students that are marginalized? And what I want to do is I start with Marcellus on that question.
Yeah, okay. So, being class president, I have a big take in trying to get a comprehensive like what's going on with the students. And so in my class, I have the ability to analyze the data that we have. Like, okay, this is where my graduation rate is going. We're not at the rate that we have to be, only because that like you said, the pandemic hit us really hard. But that this idea of where we're failing starts way back before the pandemic. I think where most educators mess up is not on the first impression, the first introduction. I remember I was at the not in Bond, I'm sorry, the Black Male College Institute during the summer, and I was doing a call, and Mr. Alante, he explains about luggage, and we had to write down all the luggage that we had, and we had to bring it to and talk about it, how it brings to the classroom. I think what happens is teachers don't initially understand that every student has different luggage. And so on the first day, instead of trying to reprimand a student for not coming to class on time, let's try to understand, okay, what's going on. Oh, you don't have a pencil. I don't have a pencil because I had to rush out the house. You know, I'm late because I had to wake my sister up. You know, not understanding that there's so much that goes on before we get into the school building, it messes with us mentally, right? So if we feel that we're not appreciated or we're not analyzed or we're not looked at into like, okay, something is definitely going on. Before I start trying to teach this lesson, let's talk, let's figure it out, you know? So having that connection is the biggest flaw that I think teachers mess up with. And so if you can, especially with Black boys, you have to be delicate. You have to approach it in an idea that you're able to understand that we're born with natural strikes against us. We're already carrying luggage when we're first born, and the luggage just keeps piling up as soon as we get through the age, you know. So when we come into the building, let's address the luggage. Let's try to embrace it. Let's try to fix it. And so, and it's one thing for a teacher to understand the luggage that we're handling, but it's also a teacher who's trying to work with the luggage. And so I feel like that is the most problem that we go through. So if teachers can understand the luggage, I'm pretty sure we can get students back to want to come to school, to want to learn, especially Black boys.
Everybody take a deep breath again. I'm about to need another break. I don't know about you all, but I'm about to need another break. All right, that's like a mini lesson in culturally responsive practice. What is the luggage that your students are walking into the door with? And how are you being empathetic about that as you are thinking about how you will reach and teach them? All right, let's jump over to let's go to Michael, then Drake, and then we'll go to Kevin. We'll go in that order. So, Michael, tell us about some of the marginalized students, some of those students who aren't doing well. What do you think we as educators are missing? What could we do differently?
Well, some of the reasons may not be the teachers though, because the data sometimes show that Black male students set their expectations low because their mindset different from others. But some teachers may not have a good way to express the learning experience, or how to give out the information needed to succeed in life, or at least go to college and have a good degree. So I believe that some teachers may not, or they may have the experience to connect with other students, but they just don't know how to express their own feelings to the student. And that's all I have to say, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. I think you make a great point. The ability to connect and express those things that may be here that we want to communicate. How do we get to that point where we know how to do that as educators? But you also entered into that question with a good point about sometimes our students are disengaged. Some of it is not all on the teachers, and we do have to keep that in the back of our mind as we're thinking about how we improve our practice as educators. Go ahead, Drake, and jump in here.
I just think that with the marginalized students, first, every day when I wake up or when I was on the Board of Education, I always realize my privilege, right? Both my parents are together. They both have very stable jobs. I have a very nice place to lay my head. I never go to bed hungry, right? I never want for anything, and I'm blessed to pursue these other things. Anytime, even when I'm working with involved students, I always make the conscious realization that they have the wherewithal to get involved, right? To say their struggles. Not every student has that. But with marginalized students, I just really think we need to show them that there's a lot more than what they see. There's a lot more to the world than their neighborhood, than their home life, because sometimes those can be very, as you all know, destructive and just scary places to be at. And they may think there's only one way out, one sure way out, but there are dozens of other ways. Um, I've really been blessed to, with my time on the school board in NAACP, to really know a lot of Black professionals, folks like Dr. Hughes, Dr. Gillens from Anne Arundel County, folks from across the state like Dr. Kane. I see she's on the call. My own principal, Dr. Rivers, and even you, Dr. Howard, right? We just met, but now these are people I can really reach out to, and I know that they have my back because they've been there one day. And I think if somehow we can really give these, Black boys these connections earlier on so they know that there's something more than, you can do whatever you want because someone's done it before. I mean, that will really go a long way. And my older brother graduated from Morehouse College in 2016. My older sister graduated from Virginia State University in 2013. They talk about all these famous people they met or all these mentors that they have in these, large circles of people that they can reach out to. And I think to myself, I'm a senior in high school. I'm about to be a rising freshman in college, and I have some of these same connections. And that's a really amazing thing. And I think if somehow that these we can make sure other Black youth see this, that they can inspire to, walk like these people, talk like these people, act like these people, get to where these people are. I mean, I think that's where you'll see a real change.
Right, Kevin, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I feel like Great makes such. Sorry, I feel like Drake makes such an important point on mentors, and I think that also relates back to just like the way that we show respect for like students and towards teachers and that dynamic, that relationship. If the student does not does not respect the teacher through some way, the student's not going to be willing to do work for that teacher. And I'm sure that if most people, like, if they don't like a teacher, they'll be less likely to do work, they'll be less likely to want to engage in that class. And that also just really emphasizes the fact that we really do more strengthening of the relationship between teachers and students. but also taking into account the various socio-emotional factors that typically affect marginalized students the most. And just realizing that not every student is the same, and we take tailored approaches to each one, and definitely also making sure that students do not feel like they are falling through the crack, that they're beyond saving in a sense. Really making sure that what programs we have that save these students or that prevent them from really like falling deep and burying themselves. Because I think everyone has felt this at some point, but once you start going behind on work, once you start missing assignments, it becomes like a giant snowball that rolls down, and that can disaffect school and hurt performance in so many ways. So just I guess really making sure that we really keep pushing and that we really understand their home life, right? We understand them as a person. We make connections, one-on-one connections between me, the counselor, me, the teacher, and the student, or just anything. And that typically helps, and I've seen it too, helps students like know, especially it helps them have a sense of core grounding. Like it helps them know, like, hey, I have to work for something. I don't want to disappoint this teacher because I respect them and I want to make them proud. Just really developing those connections is so essential.
All right, thank you all. So I'm gonna come off of our script just a little bit and throw something a little bit more impromptu at you. As you all are speaking, I'm thinking about how the majority of our Black and Brown boys spend the majority of their educational experience under cross-gender and cross-cultural supervision. I'm gonna say that again. The majority of our Black and Brown boys spend the majority of their educational experience under cross-cultural and cross-gender instruction and supervision. So what that means is the majority of the teachers that we have are women, and many of them are white women. And as Black young men, there is oftentimes a mismatch in the understandings of the racial and cultural experiences of one another. A lot of the work that I do looks at implicit bias and how some of those assumptions are made and not disrupted or not interrupted immediately, and that causes for problems in those relationships and connections that you're talking about. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever had any situations in which you faced some level of bias, or you've observed it, and how might teachers go about interrupting that bias that exists? How did you develop relationships with teachers? Because sometimes students have to make a move to maintain and restore relationships as well. So can you talk to me a little bit about the impact of bias and how teachers may see you, but also how to interrupt that bias through establishing these relationships? And I see Marcellus shaking his head, so it feels like he might have something to add first. So I'll go to him, and then whoever wants to jump in can feel free to jump in.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so tying back to me serving on the diversity and equity committee for Baltimore County, we have this thing where we had students come in and have an open conversation about their experience that they endured during Baltimore County, some bias, whatever. And I will always remember this one story of this young man who attends Perry Hall, I believe, and he was telling me how he was in social study class, and he had a white teacher, and they were talking about different African American tribes, right? Well, African tribes, I'm sorry. And the teacher will always ask him, well, did I say this correct? Or did I do this correct? And he always felt like he was pointed as to like, I don't know. And so he felt like it was a very biased to him. And now, mind you, when you tie back, most of my GT classes are all other African. In my school, because we have predominantly Black, it's African American, Africans. But in another school that's predominantly white, it's always other white students are in that class. And so he was explaining to us like, oh, well, she kept referencing this to me. I didn't know what to say because I don't know, and it hurt me and it hurt him. And I was like, I hear that and I understand that, and I just think that ties back to just educating the educator. Some stuff you just don't do. You just don't do certain things or say certain things. And I think that I love about Randallstown is we have a lot of white teachers at Randallstown, right? And what they do is they will always question, well, is this appropriate to say? Is this right? And I love that. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you being curious about if this is a right term to use. But the thing we don't do is we say things and another thing that I have to point out is racism and bias looks way different now than it looked way back then. Because people now say certain things or do certain things that might not seem racist, but it is racist in a certain way. So if we make pretty clear that if you are approaching this African American man because he's the only black student in the class and you're asking him, well, this is correct, you're being biased. You're not delegating, you're not trying to understand. So that's probably the biggest thing. And so I am fortunate enough that I have never endured any bias to I don't think I have, or I've witnessed a lot, but I have never endured it. I'm a pretty loud speaker, and so most teachers don't try to see out. But I definitely have witnessed it, and I fight for it, and I speak up for those who feel that way. And anybody can tell you in Bowman County, I that is one thing I don't play with. I don't do racism pretty well, and if any teacher wants that fight, we can have it because I want it. So yeah.
Awesome. I am with you, Marcellus. I don't do racism well either. So, anybody else want to jump in? Michael, Drake, or Kevin?
Yeah, I would just say that well, first in my experience, I'll just say this up front. I mean, I don't really fit the, I guess, typical stereotype of a black male. I'm light skinned. Um, I guess I don't talk a certain way like some people would expect me to talk, and I'll just say that I've had a different experience than I would just say it. I guess dark skinned males, right? Just because I guess people feel less threatened by me. So I've never really had a problem like that where just based on my looks alone, someone said, "Oh, he might be a problem. Let me keep my eye on him." Never in the school, but ninth grade AP US history, I took it because history is my favorite subject. It's my favorite subject. I mean, I would watch the History Channel for fun in the third grade, right? Not Nickelodeon, but the History Channel, right? So that's just how much I like history. My parents would always take us on like cultural field trips to different places. Like I said, I have a lot of privilege living where I live at in Anne Arundel County, right? You have all these free museums in Washington, D.C. We would take weekend trips and just learn more about our history. Um, so AP US history, we were learning about immigration and how the Irish were treated in like the 1800s. And my teacher made this comment. I was the only one that picked up on it. She said the Irish were treated worse than the slaves in some cases. And I said, no, no, they weren't. Then she pulled up a picture that just said it was a sign about it was a want ad and said Irish need not apply. And I said, well, the slaves couldn't apply. Then we went back and forth, and it was just me versus her. And I was not the only black student in the class, but I was really the only student with the wherewithal to try and combat what she was saying. And she had been a teacher for a while. So my question is, how many other students has she told that to? Right. And I just never got why she was really comparing tragedies, right? You can say it was like this in some ways, but why you got to say that they were treated worse than them? I mean, I just never got that. But then the next class, she made a whole PowerPoint. And she said, just for Drake. And then she came up with more pictures about the Irish potato famine. And I kind of just laughed it off and took a picture of the slide. I still have it. And I just told everybody that, she's the teacher. I'm not going to win right here, but I know I'm right. Um, and that was really the one big experience that I had. So, and I share that with you all today because I think going forward, people should just know that when you're, I guess, teaching history, I think someone said it, cultural responsiveness, right? You got to read the room, know you're talking to, and make sure that you're not saying what you think is right, but what actually happened, right? Give them the objective facts, not the subjective facts.
Wow. Objective facts, folks, not subjective. Fantastic. Great way to close that out. Michael or Kevin, would you like to offer a thought on that question?
I just like
So
to offer a quick thought based on like just the cross culture, like cross gender aspect. The thing I've seen in like a lot of schools sometimes, just when looking at like in high school, right? You typically tend to see a disparity based on teachers teaching certain advanced courses. And I've like found that sometimes that we have all our minority teachers, they all end up teaching lower level courses and don't necessarily get a chance at having the higher level courses at all, and which creates like it creates the same aspect, especially when the students or with certain groups that go up into advanced courses, they only get the same type of teacher, the same in excuse my terms, but like the same old white woman. They keep having the same teacher, and they don't really get any diverse teacher options. They don't get to learn from new faces or new voices. And those teachers have typically been teaching that same advanced subject for over 20 years. And there's not really necessarily a new mindset that's been inputted into that teacher, so they can pass it on to the students. And so that really creates that close culture feel. If you have a black man in a class, right, having get that same cross culture experience, right, not having that open mindset, not being able to hear from a teacher who might have similar experiences, not being able to have the same facts, or not being able to necessarily empathize, that does create a disparity, and it does show certain, I don't put it, but it does matter. Even though it might be little, it does matter in terms, and people and students do notice these things. That's just a quick comment I had.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, did you want to chime in? You might be on mute, Michael. Or you're frozen, maybe. There's a little bit of an internet lag. Let me come back to you, Michael. It looks like a little bit of an internet lag on your end. So as we are at a point in our panelist segment, before we go to questions from the audience, I did want to see if there was a special guest that I invited to be here. Actually, Dr. Green invited him to be here. Is Hudson Ricks here?
I am.
It's Hudson Ricks. Hello, Hudson. Yes,
Hello.
look at that young man right there. I love that bow tie, sir.
Thank you.
So, Hudson, can you tell us what grade you're in and what school you go to?
Of course. So my name is Hudson Daniel Ricks, and I'm a fifth grade student at Calvert Elementary School.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, Hudson. It's great to see you and great to meet you. So from what I understand, you are participating as a team member of your pilot school's implementation team.
Yes,
So
sir.
you will be so you will be helping to lead some of the work that will be taking place in your elementary school. Can you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to be part of the initiative?
Yes, sir. Great question. So this work, it's important to me because I have a chance to use my voice while also making a difference throughout my community. This initiative is important to me because it gives my school and I a chance to explore and remove the different barriers that hold our students back. As a student, I want to be able to work to the maximum of my ability and for my peers to have every opportunity to do the same. This initiative will give my school the opportunity to identify strategies to help teachers connect with their students and make learning more enjoyable for all. My principal, Dr. Sampson, has given me the chance to serve on my school's implementation team, and I'm honored to play a role in making a difference in my school and for other students in Maryland. I'm excited to lend a hand in this initiative.
All right, thank you. Wow, I'm glad that you are taking part in this. And um, Dr. Sample, shout out to you for having this young man and for bringing him in and recognizing the power of his voice. So Hudson, tell us about some ideas that you might have, or some things that you would like to see happen as a result of this initiative in your school.
So a few things that I would like to see in my school are African American mentors that work in like the STEM fields and coding to show African American boys that they can succeed in all of these areas. I would like to see like mentoring programs that include men who are willing to lend a hand or chat, and also more male teachers in our schools because a lot of comments were about this earlier. a lot of teachers, you don't see a lot of male teachers in schools. Like if you think of a school, you would think of a Caucasian woman teaching, because I've never had a male or African American male teacher, and I've only had one African American woman teach me before. So we're just more male teachers in general.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Hudson. Wow. Do we need that break yet? Um, every time I hear somebody speak, I feel like I need a break. Thank you all so much for participating in this important conversation. We are going to keep you all on for a little while longer. We're going to see if there are any members of the audience who have questions for you. If you would like to ask a question, I'm going to ask that you put cricket into the chat, and then we will call on you in the order in which we see that term. I think we should take advantage of these young men while we have them. And so we have Ken Patterson, and then we will have Dr. Green, and we'll see if anybody else joins in. But Ken, feel free to unmute and ask your question to whoever on the panel you have an interest in getting a response from. Thanks, Ken.
Yes, first of all, I want to say I do like the bow tie. I'm a bow tie fanatic there, Mr. Hudson. It's a great hearing from you guys. I'm just listening to all of the young men speak, and it is just reminding me of the experience that I had growing up as an African American child in education. So it's great to hear all of you so well spoken. And I don't mean that in a underhanded compliment. I mean that we need your voice. We need more of your voice. I wanted to ask any of you, including especially Drake, just the idea of this luggage thing kind of blew my mind, right? I don't know that I've recovered in these past 15 minutes since you made that statement. I want, if you can kind of expound on that as a student, how you would encourage teachers to explore that in a way that helps students. So we can go as teachers and go and talk about luggage and do PDs and stuff, but from a student perspective, what are some things that we may need to think about and focus on if we're going to share this concept with teachers so that they can impact their students?
Yeah, I think teachers need to first realize that it's not going to be a cut and dry conversation, right? You're not going to have all the answers, and at the end of the conversation, the student's not going to feel better, right away. Mistakes will happen. You're going to say the wrong thing, but if you're upfront about that, I think the students will really understand that. I mean, will really appreciate that. I know I would really appreciate that, just because then I know that I can be vulnerable because you're vulnerable, right? And that's how these uncomfortable conversations really one day become comfortable when you're trying to heal these wounds. Because I think people think that, well, if I don't talk about it, I can't do any damage. Not talking about it, that's when you do the most damage. Because as a 12, 13-year-old kid, seeing someone else that looks like me, who's just a little older than me, getting murdered, right? That's very, very traumatic. And when I walk into the school doors, there's not a separation of what I saw at home versus what I'm doing at school. It's on my mind. So just bring it up, and it's gonna be rough. This is gonna be rough, and I don't have any advice on what to exactly say, or I can't point you to a book or a quote. But just know that, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. So everything that Mr. Smith saying, I agree with. But one thing with the whole luggage issue that I like to do is, one, as the school building, I like to think of school as a different world. We come from wherever issues we're facing on the outside, those all stop at the door, and we enter into this classroom, into this building. We're surrounded by people who actually are compassionate about what they're doing. So with the whole luggage thing, maybe taking a day instead of planning a lesson plan, let's sit there and I really enjoyed the whole writing down all the issues that I'm facing on a piece of paper, and then just balling it up and throw it out and then talking about it. That helped me. So maybe thinking of some activities in that way where it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, we're going to sit here and talk about feelings today, but make it into an activity like, okay, well, I know that we all are having some issues. Let's talk about it. And like you said, if a teacher starts with the first thing, if they do it first, then I promise you there'll be more who wants to talk about it. But the idea of a school being a safe place that's what we have to build that connection on. There's no way that I'm going to express my feelings if I feel like I'm not safe inside the building. So having these tough conversations play greater impact into anything. Like he was saying, when the George Floyd thing happened, and I sat there and watched that, my principal sent out a whole letter saying he is so sorry, explaining all this stuff, and he canceled all instruction for that day. We had to sit there and we talked about it. We had meaningful conversation, and even the Caucasian teachers, they were like, "I am so sorry." They were heartbroken. They didn't know what to explain, and they asked us. We talked about it, and that really helped me, one, mentally, but physically, because I realized that people actually care. So another thing is just making the school a safe place. And that ties back just to all the PDs that you do, or even the administration or the teacher, whoever we're hiring inside the building, whoever we're giving these jobs. Because when you're becoming an educator, you have to realize that you're more than just an educator. You're not just an educator at that time. You're a parent, you're a doctor, you're everything and above, because this is our safe place, it's our safe haven. So from the time we clock in to the time we clock out, you are everything. So at that time, you have to think as that. And that means that you have to deal with the luggage that comes with it. And I know, like I said, it's not easy talking about it. Nothing's easy. If everything was easy, we all would be fine. But you have to find a way. And it's the great teachers who try to go above and beyond the bare minimum. So if the bare minimum is just checking in on how you're doing today, then you're just a bare minimum teacher. But the above and beyond teachers come in and they take on what you said and make it bigger. They take it to a greater stance. And so that's what we need right there.
Deep breath, everybody. Deep breath. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Mr. Patterson. I know Dr. Green. Dr. Green had a question.
I did. Let me see, is he still on? Michael Washington, our panelist? Is Michael still
Yes,
there?
I am still here.
All
If
right,
it lets me
great,
talk.
Michael. I have a special heart for Westlake. I mentored teachers at Westlake for a while. Michael, you may have heard Dr. Kunjufu make a statement that I have also often heard, unfortunately, coming from some of our Black boys and young men, that it's not cool to be smart. And if they haven't said it in words, they say it in actions. Do you hear that, Michael? And also, is that something that really we can address, that we can combat? And what are your ideas about that? Is it not cool to be
So,
smart?
so I don't hear that at Westlake, but at other schools I do. And you can be cool if you're smart, because I know some people got a degree that's in the NBA. Some people have like some people have good jobs, but they over here have nice cars looking cool. So you can be cool while you have money, while you have a degree, while you're smart. But maybe some people think differently because of how they grew up as, saying it's not cool to be smart because their dad was cool to them, but he probably went to jail or had all these tattoos for no reason. So it's probably just because of how the student grew up as.
Would any of the other panelists like to address that?
I would love to address this. I know that I personally felt it. That's like whenever going through school, like my just by I don't know, just by trying in class, right? Being called white because you're trying, just basically that should not be a thing. And that also young Black men tend to have like this feeling to have the masculinities complex seen like their parents, seen in media, seen in culture, and that tends to penetrate like just society in general and their general mindset. And it's like even kind of like you can see it sometimes. Like there'll be little boys, right, who will fake a deeper voice just to have that like masculinity complex and have really like that. And I feel like that's just been like pushed so much through society. It's even affecting our young kids and making them develop mindsets already towards that. And so definitely making it cool to be smart is definitely a good thing. And in the past, people have been discriminated or just been called like certain names for just wanting to try, wanting to really like see how far they can go in school. But definitely like measuring like smartness and intelligence. School is just one way of intelligence, and it definitely does not judge you as a person. And there's so many intelligent people. Honestly, school is just your knowledge. It doesn't determine really your intelligence at all. And I feel like we really need to like define that and really see what we can do to make it like make students want to push themselves, challenge themselves, do the best for you. Let's just like what can you do for you to make sure you succeed and really like push that at an earlier age.
So I agree with
Thank
everything he's saying. So one thing that I want to hit bases on this one about I don't believe that I've ever experienced any students saying that being smart is right or being smart is wrong, right? The things that I experience are students who try to be smart and then they get told or they experience other things and then being smart is not something that they want to do anymore. So um the grading system, I hate it from the top to bottom. I hate the idea that we have to give a student a label to say if they're succeeding at this far, right? Because that's what we live by. That's what I'm living through my high school year. If I don't get the A, then I'm failing, and that's that, right? So I have students, I have peers who tell me like, oh well, Mr. Johnson said that I got an F on this, I'm not going to succeed today, and stuff like that resonates with a Black student. Okay, we already are coming up with so much stuff, and then if I have a teacher tell me that, oh, I'll never be anything, or I'll never amount to anything, I can't do this or I can't do that, I'm going to keep that for the rest of my life, and that plays a part. So mental health is a very big critical factor for Black men, for Black young men, and so I don't think when we're talking about trying to be smart, that's not the issue right there. I don't believe students have an issue with being smart. I believe students have issue with people trying to support them being smart. So instead of me giving me a D on the report card, giving me a D, let's say, oh, we got a D, but that's okay. We're going to dust it off and come back. Let me assist you. Come to coach class. And instead of being a teacher, you have to find different navigations to help a student because every student is different. Not one student is the same. Just because Bob is good with the verbal and the vocab and the visualization of things doesn't mean that I'm okay with that. And I know that seems like a lot when you have 100+ kids, but that's the job you sign up for. You have to be able to navigate what you're doing. And so just that plays a very important part. And so being smart, I don't, like I said, I've never witnessed that in my life. A person saying that being smart is right. Like I said, it's just that we lack in support for the student of trying to be smart. And so we tackle that, then we'll be fine.
If I could just elaborate on Marcel's point, um, definitely like I don't think like you can tie like smartness to schoolwork at all because the large majority of time a student will fail class is because they don't turn in work, right? Not turning in work is like literally the number one thing that makes a student fail class, right? And why are they not turning in work? Is the Are they not confident in material? Do they not have help to get the material? Are they just giving up on it? And really addressing like those questions because I don't think it's the intelligence that has a play at all. Every student is intelligent, right? But it's just like, are they? How can we help them turn in work? How can we make sure that they have help in turning into work?
Mhm. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. So is Hudson still here?
I am.
Okay, fantastic. So what we're going to do, gentlemen, as we come to a close, I'm going to give you all 60 seconds or less um, to tell the audience what you think they need to hear. What is one action item? What is one takeaway that folks need to leave with from this conversation? So again, you're in 60 seconds or less, you're telling this audience, largely educators, what is it that you want them to take away? What is the action item that you want them to take into this new school year where many students have been out for over a year? We've been going back and forth in virtual learning. What is it that you want us educators to take away? And we're going to start with Hudson, and then we'll go to Drake, Michael, Marcellus, and we'll finish with our state student member of the board, Kevin. I'm going to put that in the chat so you see the order. So Hudson, you can go ahead and get us started.
Mine isn't 60 seconds long. It's very short, but I think it really delivers a message. Our voice matters, and today is a great day to make a difference, which means even though one voice isn't loud, I mean, I know you notice maybe at like a football game or something, you put together all of your voices and it's very loud. But one voice, it won't really make, you won't exactly hear it if you're in like a football game or something. But even though you can't hear that voice, it really makes a difference. Because if the whole stadium is cheering for one team, and there's this football player that isn't, they aren't proud of themselves, they feel like they're bad, they don't have any confidence about themselves. But if there's that one person that's cheering for them, that can make a difference. That one person can make a difference.
OMG. Thank you, Hudson. All right, let's go on to Drake.
Goodness, 60 seconds. That was my problem on the school board. I was always long-winded. Let's see. I think that while I was reading the chat, it seemed like everyone really enjoyed the conversation, really enjoyed hearing all our voices. Thing is, as educators, you can have this conversation pretty much daily, right? Just keep these conversations going with the students in your classrooms because they'll tell you straight up to your face, what they like, what they dislike. They'll be brutally honest. I have been on the receiving end of some of those comments. But then I really think to those that aren't educators or if you know someone that's thinking about getting involved, Diana Ross, she has this song and it goes, reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place if you can, right? Just get out there, see what you can do. Really, we need more folks involved in the schools, especially Black people. There's a reason that the stereotypical teacher is a white female because those are the ones that are becoming teachers. There's a reason that being Black, what we were just talking about, that being smart is equivalent to being white because that's just our mindset right now in this culture. So really, we just want to make sure that these Black boys, that's the focus of this conversation, really all Black and brown students know that there is more out there. So I open with this, and I guess I'll close with this. Be bold for good.
Be bold for good. Somebody go ahead and put that in the chat. Michael, you're up next.
So I want the audience to take what I said and help create a program that will support Black male students to succeed academically and emotionally. Because some Black male students might not have a father figure in their life. So the teacher could be their father figure or could act like one for the time period in that class. So that's all I gotta say.
I think that's a great point, Michael. Appreciate it. I think Marcellus is up next.
So 60 seconds. Okay. I think my first thing when we go into this new school year is that we have to understand the grace over grades before we start trying to label anything. Honestly, let's get to understand what everyone's going through. Back to the luggage. Let's understand the luggage, right? Another thing is I need all of the educators, no matter what you're doing, just keep taking the next step. You're never done. So it's just because we accomplished one thing, there's always something else that can be done. So take an additional step. Just don't stop, please. And so that's something that I think you all can do. I know you all can do because you're here for a 4-hour conference. So you got this. So just take the additional step and keep going and try to touch somebody who doesn't want to take the step, try to get those custodians and try to help them. Let them know like you ain't doing this right. Let me help you out in that type of way. So
All right. Thank you, Marcellus. And to the man who has the voice that speaks across 24 districts in the state of Maryland, Kevin, take us home.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Howard. Just educators, mainly like talking to the audience. I know that you guys educators are swamped with PD trainings and various conferences that you have to attend to and all this, but really like the number one thing to take back from this conference that you attended, just really take the practice step and not just listen to this conference, right? But see what you can actually do to implement these ideas, these conversations, be bold for good in your classrooms, in your schools, in your school districts, right? Don't just, I know in many conferences we go to, right? We just sit through them, we just hear it, right? But we never take action. So definitely the one phrase I can say is take action for good, right? Take action for good. Do it. Go in your classrooms, implement these tough changes, implement or talk to administration about these. Or if you're in administration, make sure to try and try ideas in your school, right? Because if we don't try, we never can improve. We might fail, but we can never improve if we don't try, right? So definitely take that practice step. Don't just listen to what has been said here, right? But actually go out and implement it. Take the ideas, take all the collective knowledge that has been presented and take it back to your school districts, schools to make sure that we're making all of Maryland a better place for our Black and brown students, for our Black boys, for everyone.
All right, we appreciate those closing words. So in the chat, let's give these young men a shout out. Let's show them some love for their voice and their contribution to this summit. If there haven't been some stereotypes disrupted in this space, I don't know what will. So gentlemen, I applaud you. It's been great emailing and texting and zooming with you all to have some conversation. You guys have incredibly busy schedules. But we were able to connect it, and you all did a fantastic job. And thank you to Hudson, not only coming in with the sharp bow tie, but more so coming in with the sharp ideas and impactful ideas that you plan to support in your elementary school. So I just wanted to thank you one more time, and let's continue to stay connected to this work. This does not exist without you. I'm saying that for the record. This does not exist without you, your voice, as well as your peers. So let's continue to stay connected. And with no further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my advisory council colleague, Dr. Theo Holt, who will serve as the moderator for the last segment of our program today. So if you need to self-break, please feel free to do so. I know you've been sitting for a while, but feel free to self-break, and we will be getting started in about 1 or 2 minutes as soon as Dr. Theo Holt and his panelists come on. Dr. Holt, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Dr. Howard. I'll just give it 1 minute for our panelists to come on. And while we're waiting, I just want to thank you so much. I'm super excited right now, and I want to close this out strong. This summit so far has been phenomenal. I learned so much, and we want to close it out with these 4 excellent panelists to talk about how we can help further support our Black males in education. I'm so proud to be a part of this task force along with the advisory council, and I'm super excited that the state of Maryland has taken this intentional pause to demarcate a space to support our Black young males in education. We need this so much, and it's just amazing to have you all here as pilots, schools, and participants. And I thank you for the young males who just spoke. So if all our panelists are on, I do see Dr. Kane, I see Dr. Davis. I'm looking for, I see Dr. Coleman, and I am waiting for Ms. Walsh. Is she on right now?
I'm here. I think it says Alexandra Walsh instead of Alexandra.
Alexandra Walsh. All right, thank you so much for being here. So I'm gonna allow you to introduce yourself with this lead-off question, okay? And we're gonna start with Dr. Kane. Tell us about your role related to this work.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I serve currently as a practice professor for the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, formerly the superintendent for Queen Anne's County Public Schools. And I know, yes, Ms. Wright and colleagues from Queen Anne's County. And there are also, just shout out to some of the colleagues from Chesapeake College, I notice are online. So glad to see all of them there. But I've had several roles in school districts in Maryland and Virginia, from literally substitute teacher to superintendent. So I am so happy to be here and so happy to continue to push this work forward. Not at the superintendent level, obviously, but I will be able to impact the training and the learning and the building professional capacity for leaders across the world. Actually, I have a lot of international students, students across the United States. So I am just so excited to be able to be a part of this work.
Dr. Julius Davis.
Good morning. I think we're still in the morning. It was so inspirational to hear that previous panel. I want to give a shout out to all the young men and Dr. Howard for a really great panel, really inspiring. And it's hard to come after those great young men. So hopefully we do some justice to end out the summit for today. And so I'm Julius Davis. I'm a professor at Bowie State University in the Education Department. I'm also the director for the Center for Research and Mentoring of Black Male Students and Teachers. And I think my role in this, I work a lot with teachers and I work a lot with Black male students who are pre-K through college. And so this summit to me is very instrumental for us to continue to move the conversation forward and so that I can see more young men at the college level. So I'm happy to be here and with my colleagues on this panel.
Dr. Coleman.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Norman Coleman. I'm a principal for one of the pilot schools, Francis Scott Key Middle School here in Montgomery County. My role is very similar to Dr. Davis and Dr. Kane, is to continue to move this conversation forward, but not just the conversation, to move the work forward, to really making sure that we're not just having conversation, but we're being action oriented and really making sure we're building a foundation for not only for our young men, but also for our adults, for our staff to be able to see this, the importance of this need and continue to elevate it and be inspired by what these young men can do. And so I see that as a critical part for me as a school principal to make sure that becomes an implementation at my school level and across the district, help other leaders who may have an interest in this work as well too.
Thank you. And Ms. Walsh.
Good morning. My name's Lexi Walsh, and I'm finishing up as a second grade teacher, and I'm going to be moving into a coaching position, but in a school building. I'm also teaching a course at McDaniel in critically reflective instruction. I feel my role in this work is really to, in a school building and on a school level, reach our teachers, especially our white female teachers, and do the work so that we can make sure all of our students, especially our boys, are learning.
Great. All right, thank you for introducing yourselves. So we're gonna lead off with Ms. Walsh on this first question. What do you think teachers and educators need to know to effectively reach and teach Black boys?
So I think, and I'm speaking as a white woman, and I'm kind of speaking to our white female teachers, there is intentional work that needs to be done with our white teachers. We need to learn to lean into certain parts of conversations and when to lean out. We also need to do that intentional learning. I think that educators need, when we have PDs and trainings, they need to be real. Like, it's not just sitting through a training. We need to come out with something tangible that we're bringing right back to our classroom, and definitely building relationships with our students. And I think that we need to do complete revamps of our classroom rules, procedures, and policies, and just on a school level, what's working, what's not, and why is it not. And then when it comes to our curriculum, remember that we're in the business of students. So no matter what we're supposed to be teaching, I can go through and I can check all the boxes that I taught it, but if my students didn't learn it, then what I'm doing means nothing. So we need to make sure that what we are doing, even if that means sometimes, I probably shouldn't say this, we have to close our door. We need to close our door to make sure we are teaching our students so that they're learning.
All right, Dr. Coleman.
I'm gonna take a slightly different approach. I'm gonna use the word power, and I'm gonna think of that three different components of this word power that I think educators should think about. I think the first is position. Understand the power of your position. You have a tremendous power of influence every single day that you come into a building, come into a classroom, and interact with students, other staff members, and parents. The other position I want to take on power is purpose, right? Understand the purpose of why you're here. These young men that we interact with every day, there's a purpose that they've been designed for and created for. And as educators, using your position to help draw out that purpose and direct them in the path where they need to go. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is using that power of your voice, right? To be an advocate, to be someone who can step in and encourage these young men, but also speak up when you see other educators in the building who are not doing these things. Oftentimes I'll walk through a building and I'll hear something and I look for another colleague to say something. And when a teacher doesn't say something, I have to intervene and say something. And as a principal, I shouldn't be the only voice, right? We should create a community where colleagues feel like I can challenge my members of my team, whether it's in the department or PLC, to do this work at a higher and more advanced level when it comes to our African American boys and their learning in the school system.
Dr. Davis?
So I think any work involving Black boys at any level, whether it's pre-K, infants, collegiate level, should be an act of love. And when I work with my team and I work with young men, that's one of the messages that I try to communicate, that I do this because I love Black boys and young men. I see our future and our present connected to them. And we need to show these young men, as this summit has so eloquently shown, that we love them, that we care about them, that we support them, and that we're willing to do anything within our power, going back to what Dr. Coleman shared, to support them and move them forward. And I think that teachers, leaders throughout the state and at the school level, throughout the district level, should embrace Black boys as an act of love, like this one sitting on my lap here. But this work, I think with Black boys, they haven't been shown enough love. And if we could implement this work and ground our work in the care and love that they deserve, I think that we'll see the kind of change that we need.
Thank you. And Dr. Kane?
Thank you. First of all, kudos to the gentlemen who talked on the student panel. They were just phenomenal. And I mean, I can't say enough about how important it was for us to hear those action steps that they shared. So my response is going to be basically a continuation of what they said. We have to do something. There are a lot of things that we could say that we want to do, and you know, if we really got philosophical about it, we could say this should be happening or that should be happening. But really, it's about, what are you going to do as a teacher? What are you going to do? Are you going to sit and be quiet, or are you going to speak up for these young men? You have to speak up. That's for adults and that's for children. I'm going to steal Dr. Howard's line. You know, this inequity lives in silence. And so the more we decide that we aren't going to say anything and that we aren't going to, address what we know to be wrong, because it's not easy, right? That's more trouble our Black boys are going to find themselves in, whether it's trouble philosophically or trouble in reality, right? So my message would be, do something, say something, speak up. And what you can do is going to be different in your district than it is in somebody else's district, because one district might say, okay, this is where we live. We are about having conversations about race. What was Drake's group? They talk justice. Let's talk justice. There are districts, and I came from one, that they don't want to talk about these things. They don't want to acknowledge that this is real and this is happening to our Black boys, but we have to. And in another district, you know, it may be sort of middle of the road. Sometimes we talk about it, not consistent. I think that for teachers, you are so powerful. The first thing you have to do is look into yourself, think about these boys, and speak up. You know, if you know that we are not serving Black boys, what can you do in your district and keep your job, right? That's going to make a difference for a Black boy.
Well, thank you for that. All right, so now we want to shift and then think about the recommendations we made over this past year. Like as mentioned earlier, like the task force came together last summer, and we came together with these 16 recommendations. So out of the recommendations provided by the task force, which recommendations are you most excited to see in schools? And we'll start with Dr. Davis.
As someone who works to try to get more Black men into the teaching profession, I'm excited about the task force report pushing the increase of Black male educators from high school on. And I think that in order for us to really get the supply that we need, we're going to have to start early. I think even as early as middle school. And I think the task force report in that area to support them throughout the trajectory, even once they're in the profession through affinity groups like Bond, and even the compensation. I think those are some of the things within the report that I think I'm excited about, and hoping that we achieve those goals that other task force reports haven't been able to do in this area.
Thank you. Dr. Coleman?
Yes, I'm going to concur with what Dr. Davis said. Getting more male teachers in the profession, African American male teachers in the profession. I know that was a positive experience for me, having an African American male teacher. That experience and that learning, that was very critical to my growth and my development. But the other piece that I want to bridge off to of that and think about that the curriculum and the instruction, really look at that culturally relevant pedagogy and how we're infusing that within the students' learning experiences. And it's not, for me, it's more so than just, okay, let's identify this book, let's identify this topic. But like the young men were saying in their conversation, let's explore this topic. Let's have deep conversations. Let's have disagreements in our understanding and have some reflections around what is important and valuable coming from different cultures and different backgrounds, and really pushing that level of comfort within a classroom so that kids have a deep meaning and have a new understanding of the text and the history as they leave out of our classrooms and leave out of our schools, so they can go out in the world and support others in development and growth. And when they raise families, they're bringing that new understanding to their families as well too. So that's the other piece for me, in support of just having more of those male teachers in the building.
All right. And Ms. Walsh?
I'm going to follow off on that. I think that providing that professional learning, so that we're implementing culturally relevant pedagogy and that culturally responsive teaching is such a huge part. And I think that making sure we have those trainings for our staff so that we're able to bring it back to our students. One thing that I've done with my students that I just think is so powerful is I let them, and they're in second grade, we tear apart the social studies curriculum together. What are we learning that's right? What are we missing? And then they rebuild it. And they're in second grade. So if I'm doing this with second graders, imagine how powerful it would be if we were doing it with the rest of the school and then sending that back. And that then they connect, and then they are connected to their learning. So I think providing that professional support so other teachers feel comfortable and feel prepared to do that, I think is huge. And I'm excited about that.
Dr. Kane?
I have a background in curriculum and instruction. And so, of course, I am most excited about the recommendations for study group 3, which are centered on culturally relevant pedagogy, culturally relevant teaching, because there's some good, if you haven't had a chance to dig into it, look at those recommendations on teaching reading and teaching math, because that gets to the core of a lot of the work that needs to be happening in classrooms and schools. But aside from those things, the work on rites of passage, I think that is universal to everybody. That can help us to build stronger, more solid relationships with our students if we understand them better, if we are putting them on a pedestal, if you will, to look at what's positive about what's happening in their life while not ignoring some of the trauma that have happened. So I'm sort of, I've got two favorites. I've got the culturally relevant pedagogy and the curriculum work, but the rites of passage as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. And we have one last question, and we can get into our question and answer session. What is the one action item that you would recommend that people should take away from this summit? And we'll start off with Dr. Coleman.
So this question aligns with something that I've been talking with my leadership team with this summer. And for me, it's defining success. What does success look like for African-American males, for our boys of color? And identifying that success looks different for different people, and then building our instructional program around those differentiated levels of success. We all have an ultimate goal we want our students to achieve, but really making sure we're encouraging them as they hit different marks of success along this progression as we seek to get to the ultimate end of the goal. So for me, it's like, let's define success, because throughout our schooling, there's been one definition of success that many of our children have been told they need to aspire to. And when you don't meet that goal, our students feel like they're defeated, they're not good enough. or they're not smart or not intelligent. But if you redefine what success looks like for them, I think that gives them the motivation and inspiration to be able to move forward and see progress in their achievement throughout the time.
Thank you. Dr. Kane?
I would say the action step that I would promote is take action. Do something. Listen to your students. If at the very minimum, the best that you can do, and it may be quite a step for some districts, is get a group, get your students in a place where there's a safe forum for them to talk about their experiences so that you can take a jump off point based on what they say in your district. So let students talk and then let adults take action based on what students are saying. That would be my number one takeaway that I hope that everybody receives.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh?
I'm going to say two things. The first is that we need to remember who we're here for. Like I mentioned earlier, if you need to close your door because you're trying to educate students, close your door. And my second is an action item for our white teachers out there. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for that you don't know better. You need to be educated. You need to educate yourself, and you need to be intentional in the work that you're doing. So take action and do something, and recognize when your voice is going to be the voice in the room that's going to be heard, and recognize when you need to lean back from the conversation and listen.
And Dr. Davis?
Well, I think my colleagues have really said a great number of things that I would embrace and recommend as well. I think the action point is one that I think is very important. And one of the things I'm glad that we had Dr. Kunjufu as our keynote, and I think Dr. Kane mentioned this as well. I remember hearing a long time ago that Dr. Kunjufu didn't meet with people a lot because he said people talked a lot, but they didn't act. And so I embrace that perspective, and I embrace people who embrace that perspective, like Dr. Coleman and Dr. Howard, Dr. King, Ms. Walsh, who are all on our panel. You know, I think that we have to act where we are in our sphere of influence, like Dr. King mentioned in the chat. But I also think that we have to educate ourselves in our sphere of influence as well. We can't stop educating ourselves about Black boys and other students that are under our care. And I think that this is an ongoing process. I think that we can't rely completely on our school leaders in our districts. Some of this has to be self-education along the way to be able to act in the way that you think is most appropriate from a strength and asset-based perspective of Black boys and young men. And so I say, take action and educate yourself along the way.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. And those were all our questions. So now I'd like to open discussion up for question and answer. And if you want to, you can type in the keyword GOAT. So I know that you want to ask a question. We are making history, everyone. I'm so excited about it right now. I don't think we understand, like, we worked so hard to get here, and yeah, we're finally seeing things come together for our Black students. So we'll start off with Marcellus, one of our students, with this question.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is for all you guys, since you all are educational leaders and you all have came to the summit. What's one thing that you're going to take from the summit and try to bring to your team to help them better enhance their ability to become educators or as educators?
Is that to a particular person or to?
Oh no, it's for anybody.
All right, thank you.
So I'll jump in. It's something that we're going to continue to build on because it's a practice already in our schools, that student voice. Really using that student voice to be elevated more within the school and across our classrooms and in our programs. One of the things we're doing uniquely this year is I designed a homeroom that is all Black males. And so we're going to do some creative, unique things through there. Do some research. I'm going to tap on Dr. Davis. He's hearing this for the first time to come out, maybe do some speaking. But I have some ideas around that, what we're going to do. But we're going to collect a lot of good voice data from this particular group of students that's going to help us make some of those changes that we talk about and we can put into action.
So can I just say, Mr. McQueen, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy to see you just shining the way you did today. And it's a pleasure to have been able to work with you even before this. And so just to see you doing what you continue to do is inspiring. And so keep it up, brother. You're taking my work, so I'm expecting you to take my place at some point in time. I think you've seen some of our work with the Black Male Teachers College. We're going to be continuing to do that. We're adding in new programming this year for our freshmen. We're going to do a Black Male Educator Learning Community. I'm sharing with you work that I'm doing. We're working with Anne Arundel County Public Schools to do a rites of passage program for their middle school students. I think for me, it's going to be what I'm taking back to my team is a recommitment to work. I think this pandemic really caused a great strain on us, but we continue to move forward. We continue to work. And I think that we are going to continue to do that. And I think that would be the one thing that I'm taking away from this summit is that we got to keep working. There is a small number of people who are doing real work around Black boys to improve their conditions. And we got to scale up the work, and we got to show examples, or like our chairman said, we got to show products of success. And I think that we have to do more of that and help educate and bring others along the way with us. And so that's what you'll see me doing this year with my team, is just putting in more work and trying to figure out more how we sustain this work and how we reach more people with it.
Anyone else would like to address that question from the panel?
Sure. Kudos to you, Marcellus. You are just awesome. I am so excited for you and your future in education. We need you. My work is a little bit different. I have an opportunity to impact our leaders, like I said, across the world, across the country. And I have already embedded in my course for this fall some folks from MSDE that will be coming to speak with my my students, talking about the educational leader standards. And equity is a big part of that. I've enlisted Dr. Gillens and Dr. Hughes from Anne Arundel County to speak with my class. Lots of people to come and talk about equity and how it is applied, implemented across different types of school districts and different types of educational organizations. Because I do believe that we have to get that word out. We have to begin to change mindsets. We have to have those conversations. And that will definitely trickle down right straight to that classroom level. Because if the leader believes in it and if the leader is pushing it, then they are going to monitor to make sure that it's happening at the classroom level.
All right, anyone else? Or
Yeah, can I jump in? Oh, hello. Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Lattimore, Capitol Heights, Preach, Georges County. Hi, Dr. Kane. I just wanted to add, for my school in general, as we look and think the fact that kids have been home for 16 plus months, we can't come back in and do things as we've done them in years past. So we're looking for more hands-on, our students being able to freely use our school base to do their independent work, to use this time for them to move, have our staff be more engaging with them hands-on as we've been doing. And so we cannot go back into our buildings to think that we're going to operate the same way when our students have been away for so long. So.
all right, Ms. Walsh.
After hearing the young men speak before, I'm definitely going back to school, and we're going to get kids on, create a group where I'm hearing student voices from my 3rd, 4th, 5th graders. What are we going to do differently? How are these boys that are experiencing what's going on in school and in the classroom? I want them to help guide our conversations, especially with the staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Randy, Ware has a question.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for taking my question. I guess this is really for Ms. Walsh, but for anyone who would like to respond, what suggestions would you have for someone like me who's done some equity PLCs and coaching in my building? And when you encounter someone, an individual, a Caucasian teacher, who is not willing to see the microaggressions and the implicit bias that they may possess, especially toward a student of color, what suggestions would you have for a coach to help the person maybe get on board?
So a strategy that I've learned is covert coaching. So really kind of taking that, there are certain people I'm not going to reach if I just keep coming at them and having these, trying to have conversations with them when they're not ready to hear it, but asking them questions and kind of having them reflect on their own practices. I had one teacher beginning, and she was a well-seasoned teacher, good at instructing, but not reaching. And so kind of by the end of she would come in my room. We didn't even teach the same anything. We would have these conversations. I would, how's your day? Oh, why did that bother you? Why did that set you off? What do you think, what do you think is causing that? And just like asking those questions, that reflection piece. And by the end of the year, she wanted to learn, so it wasn't an overnight thing. Especially because she saw nothing wrong with her practices. She hasn't recognized her own privilege in the school system and in her own life. And so that, that the reflection, the questioning, the covert coaching was a big game changer. And I've seen it work with a lot of other educators as well.
Good afternoon, panel or distinguished guests. I do have a question that I'm so happy to see so many people who are investing in our Black and brown young men. The one little piece I am a little bit disturbed is that I see my Black men here, but there's so many other Black men in our county who have no idea that this even exists. And how can we get the word out? I personally have a brother who works in the mental health field in their county, and he had no idea that this even exists. So how can we get this word out? I know it's a small number of us, but there are more and more Black men who would definitely be a part of this.
I'll jump in here and share something. I always think about every journey starts with one person with an ideal and an action, right? And then it builds on that. You shared right here that you heard about this and you have a brother who didn't know about it. Share that information with your brother. Share it with and tell him share it with his network. And that's part of the work of what we have to do. We have to build these networks out so that people are connected, because there are a lot of people who are disconnected. But I think if we each individually look at our networks, no matter how small or big it is, and share it out with that network, it spreads. I watch my sons all the time on this social media. And I watch how they put a post and it goes from 1 follower to like 1,000 followers, right? in like a couple hours. That's what we have to do, right? We have to create followers of this message and followers of how important this is. So using our networks, whether it's through Instagram, Facebook, social media, Twitter, whatever you use to spread this message, hey, this forum's happening, get on the forum. And I think that will start to spread out. If we, all of us, not just certain individuals, all of us start to spread that in our forums, we'll cover a lot of ground rather quickly.
And I would also add too, I agree with everything that Dr. Coleman shared. I would also add that I think that we're still in the beginning stages of like really spreading the word about the task force's report or the guide that we released. And so I think I've heard people at least talking about and trying to make plans to implement some of the things. So I think people are maybe getting acclimated with the resource guide. And I think they're also figuring out what's in their capacity of influence to be able to do. At least that's what I've been seeing and hearing from folks. There are many different folks that I've heard on different spectrums who are hearing about it, who's learning about it, and they're trying to figure out where their place is with it. So I think given that we're still in the beginning stages, folks are still trying to figure out where they fit in with it and spreading the word, as Dr. Coleman was sharing.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Kia Reed, and I would like to say I am just overjoyed that I was able to get on today. And since you are in your infancy stages, one of the suggestions that I would make that would really be helpful coming from rural Queen Anne's County here in Maryland is I'm a 10-month employee, so I am an achievement mentor, and I just so happen to start checking emails because it's August. When I'm out, I'm out. I'm gonna keep it 100. And if I had not checked my email, even though I'm a school employee, I would have not have known about the summit. And my husband also pastors a small church. So one recommendation is, where do we know a good portion of Black and brown communities congregate? So, possibly sending information and doing some outreach through your faith communities and maybe some community organizations. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm just blown away. And I hope you all, I'm going to have a watch party when I get this recording.
Hi. Shared something.
Thank you. And I
Hello?
know Suzette Thorne had a question.
Hi. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay. I'm a parent, and this is really inspiring to me. So how would you say somebody like me who is a parent, how can I get involved in this? Because I have a black son, and this is really, really important to me as a parent. I have an 11th grader, and I really want to instill some of these principles in him. So how would I get involved in this?
Dr. Howard, you mind taking that question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, good afternoon. The way I see this work beginning to expand to scale, so just a little bit of context. This initiative was just approved in April to move forward. So over the course of the summer, we've met with pilot schools. They've gone through different types of training. I mean, I don't feel like I've had my summer yet, to be completely honest with you. I've been so immersed in this work, and this is one of the concluding programs of the summer, but it's also, we're considering it an official launch, if you will, because we're sharing it. You're here, we're going to have the recording. So this is a good way to share what this initiative is about with others. As soon as you can get your hands on that recording, please share it. And what we'll be doing in between the office that is established with MSDE, as well as with the advisory council, I'm sure we will be developing some ways of communicating via not only through email and MSD website, but I would think that as mentioned, social media is a big part of keeping people connected to this work. So LinkedIn and Twitter and all the other tools that educators use, I'm hoping that will be the way that this will continue to grow. Feel free to shoot me any emails or questions, or even ideas that you have about how we continue to move this work forward. But we are in the infancy stages of it, and I think it sounds like everybody's happy that this is a good starting point, but they want to see it expand. So we're looking for ideas on how to.
I'm sorry to interrupt, okay? Because I know you guys mentioned about equity, okay? A lot of parents, especially in my county, I shouldn't say a lot of parents, but some parents do not have access to social media, okay? And I'm sure that this is something that would be beneficial to them also. So how would you suggest that those parents, how would they get involved in this? Because yeah, all of you are educators and you have access to this platform. But a lot of parents, I mean, I can't say that I'm going to just speak for myself because yes, I can get access to whatever I need to get access to. But I'm sure that some parents do not have access to social media, or because of um, the um, the type of work that they do, would not have access to the platform or to social media. So how would they be able to partake in this? Because this is really important, you know.
Indeed. So what county are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
Prince George's County.
I'm sorry.
I'm in Prince George's County.
Okay,
Prince
so
George's County.
we do have a contact who is part of the advisory council, who can reach out to you. If you don't mind, you can send me your email via
Okay.
the chat. If you could do that privately, and I will have that advisory council representative reach out to you and talk about the ways in which we can expand the work so that the parent community is
Yeah.
involved. I think you're making a great point.
I would really welcome that. I would really
Yes,
welcome that. But I do
I'll
not have
certainly
access
do
to your
that.
I do not have access to your email. Is it somewhere that I can get a hold of your email?
I'm putting it in the chat now.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Very
All right,
much.
Can I
before
also even add to the parent? I think if we weren't in the pandemic, this would be in person. So it would be another way to collaborate with other parents and other educators in this space. But I think given that we're still um, under the auspices of this pandemic, it limits some ways in which we can reach and connect with parents. And so I think your point is well taken. And I think moving forward, as we move out of this space, that there'll be more opportunities for in-person contact.
Suzette Thorne, do you still have your question?
No, thank you.
All right, we'll take a couple of more. Do we have any more?
Can I share?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. My name is Patricia Hicks, and I am an MSD, Maryland State Department of Education approved trainer, and I write trainings for providers who service children from birth to 8. And last year I wrote a training and submitted it, and it's been approved on addressing and eliminating, it's a long title, the opportunity gap among African American males in the state of Maryland. I started this because I listened to Dr. Gilliam speak in Maryland, and when he talked about the stats of Black boys, I immediately had to get on the mic. And I said, this is what we've been talking about in the Black community for years. I have a Black son, and he is now engineer. I'm so proud of him. Can you say 401k? So the training that I wrote, I did it for Baltimore City Child Care Coalition. I gave away free books with a collaboration from Johns Hopkins. I submitted the article to Child Care Exchange on what's going on here in Maryland. I'm trying to get the word out as much as I can. But this is for younger children. This has to do with how children see themselves, representation in books. This talks about literacy and language. I talk about math and science. This is my life's passion. I am an ancestor in training. So if you are interested in this training, I've done it for several groups, and I want to give it out to every child care provider in the state of Maryland. It's very imperative that they understand how children see themselves, how they are represented in books that they read. And I don't know if you know the stats, there's actually stats in Baltimore City that 30% of children entering kindergarten are prepared. 30%. And they go to pre-K all day long, 30%. And we're going to change that. So I love that this is happening. I have goosebumps from the top of my head to the tip of my toe. I am so excited, proud, and glad that I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're taking one last question, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like to just start by saying thank you all for facilitating this event. This was absolutely fruitful on so many levels. I just want to take the time. My name is Benjamin Barnwell, and I want to take the time to just encourage the effort to include our non-traditional educators. As we talk about this issue with educating Black males, Black and brown boys, and just the community overall, we have to keep in mind that we have a significant number of disconnected youth that is currently not connected to the school. So we have to make sure our reach goes beyond the school buildings. And just wanted to echo what some of the others have said with regards to getting the word out through our trusted community partners, our faith community, and others. At the end of the day, this is way too important to miss any opportunity to bring in on force multipliers. So, again, thank you for making this happen. And I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget that piece, to go beyond the school buildings, go beyond formal teachers, and make sure we're including and recruiting those who are teaching every day through many other roles that they play in the life of our boys.
All right, thanks so much, Mr. Benjamin. So now I'd like to pass the mic back over to Dr. Darrell Howard. It was amazing. Thank you all so much for participating.
All right, thank you. And just as we did with our student panelists, if we could give a shout out to our adult educators who participated in this important conversation, if we can give them a little bit of love in the chat, that would be fantastic. And we are coming to a close, ladies and gentlemen. We intended for this conference initially to end around 12:30-ish. So even though the flyer says 1 p.m., we were planning on trying to reach a 12:30 closing point. I don't think anybody would argue with breaking for lunch, shortly. So we're going to have some closing remarks from Dr. Marsha Sprinkle. She will share who she is, her connection to this work, and what she wants us to leave with. It has been an honor again to not only serve as the advisory council chair, but to be a facilitator in this summit. And I look forward to staying connected with all of you. So thank you very much for being here. Dr. Sprinkle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Howard. Wow, this has been a wonderful experience here today. And I just want you to know that the conversations are not going to stop today. They will continue. So I know some of our attendees today had questions about the continued conversations and expanding the conversations. So please know that we will be expanding. And I think I just need to tell you that I am Marsha Sprinkle, as Dr. Howard mentioned. I am the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of Curriculum, Instructional Improvement, and Professional Learning. And I'm also one of the co-chairs for the Advisory Council on Achieving Academic Equity and Excellence for Black Boys. So on behalf of the Advisory Council on Achieving Academic Equity and Excellence for Black Boys, we would like to thank all attendees for your participation today in today's virtual summit on transforming the culture of Maryland schools for Black boys. We hope that today's summit was informative and will inspire you the days ahead. A special thank you to Superintendent Choudhury for sharing the importance of the work surrounding Black boys in Maryland schools. Thank you, Dr. Green, for leading the way, expressing your passion, and sharing the vision for transforming the culture of Maryland schools for our Black boys. We can't thank you enough, Dr. Green. A special thanks to Dr. Kunjufu for serving as today's keynote. You have not just elevated the causes and issues that exist, but you have offered solutions, and we appreciate that. Thank you to the educator and student panelists. The perspectives you have shared today will impact us as we continue to move forward in meeting the needs of our Black boys. You have enlightened and inspired us. Dr. Howard, thank you for taking the reins and leading the Advisory Council on Achieving Academic Equity and Excellence for Black boys in Maryland schools. I would also like to give a special thanks to our State Board President, Mr. Clarence Crawford. He was instrumental in advancing the work of the task force. And last but certainly not least, I would like to thank each member of the Advisory Council. Today would not have been possible without your support and all of the work you have done behind the scenes. Sometimes the unsung heroes are faceless, but do know that you are greatly appreciated because this work is hard. It is not easy. And it's a lot of emotional work because it's a matter of the heart. So please stick with us, Advisory Council members, as we move this work forward and as we transition in the coming months to a new office here at MSDE. The next steps will be that we have 8 school systems that have graciously agreed to pilot 2 or 3 of the 16 research-based recommendations from the task force on achieving academic equity and education for our Black boys. The 8 school systems comprise 13 piloting schools. The Advisory Council will continue to support the piloting schools over the next couple of months as the new office for this work is established at MSDE.
piloting schools. We're so grateful for your willingness to participate in the pilot. We look forward to hearing about your successes and your implementation plans. And thank you again for attending today's summit. Dr. Howard.
All right, that is all, folks. Thank you so much for being here.
Dr. Green had, I'm sorry.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Dr. Holt.
Dr. Green had a comment.
Oh, Dr. Green, if you could take us home, please.
Absolutely. I first want to ask that advisory council members who are here, if you could please check your email. We want to have a debriefing session to evaluate the this morning and talk about how we can do it again real soon. All right. And also, those of you, especially Ms. Hicks, and I think someone else mentioned how they do professional development training. If you would please send your information to, let's see, to send to Dr. Howard. We're compiling a list for our pilot schools of individuals and organizations who offer professional development having to do with teaching boys and educating boys. So we can include you on that list. We're not giving our recommendation to you, but we can, and we can disseminate that information. Also, feel free, if you saw the names of the pilot schools, reach out to those principals and also offer your services, because they will be looking for ways to educate their staff and to make sure that this initiative succeeds. We cannot fail. Failure is not an option. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Dr. Davis, are we done?
If we're done here. We are done.
All right. All right.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone. For our boys, remember, if our Black boys are in trouble, so are we all. Take care.